I'm going to say it before you do. Chadwick Boseman.
Chadwick Boseman.
And Black Lives Matter. Because I just know culturally that's what we do. We raise a glass. So, yeah.
And welcome to Media Musings, the second week of Marvelous May, where we're talking about Black Panther. Currently, we see currently we have Jenny Morgan and Never Again in the chat, and of course, hello to anyone who is lurking and or watching in the future. And of course, before we get into any serious discussion of the movie, we have to acknowledge the brilliant pun that either the universe gifted us or was specifically casted into the movie itself.
There's a lot of puns around this, and it's you, so I'm nervous. Go on.
So, there are only two named white characters in this movie, and they're played by Martin Freeman and Andy Serkis, who had just come off of The Hobbit and other Lord of the Rings movies, making them literally the Tolkien white guys.
You are so lucky I can't send divorce papers across the ocean.
I thought, what? Do you know what I am?
I'm teasing, but
that I will take. I want to blame myself for that one because I had to make that tennis racket pun during the last stream, and I think Ring has just felt no, Jeff.
Ring had to
not out pun. You are not out punning me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Someone slap. Yes, Jenny. We don't slap because I don't abuse my spouse, but there may be a spanking later.
That will
Ring's expression on that.
I will like to say that will take place after I have left.
Yes, it will.
Yeah.
But and another less important way in which and I'm going to go ahead and list the less important ways Black Panther has broken ground.
Oh.
Because obviously we are going to talk about the positive things it has done in regards to Black representation and such. So as not to overshadow those, I'm going to go ahead and blitz through a couple of other ways that Black Panther has broken ground.
Mm-hmm.
So firstly, it is the first superhero movie to have been nominated for Best Picture. Secondly, it was the first MCU movie or the first MCU solo movie that wasn't an origin story. I am not counting Spider-Man Homecoming because we've had like several Spider-Man movies beforehand. So technically that
plot was done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, Spider-Man Homecoming probably would have been an origin movie if we hadn't already had two iterations of Spider-Man beforehand.
Yeah. It's kind of like similar thing. Like it's a similar thing of, we do not need to see another Batman origin movie.
Yeah.
It's that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And like Black Panther is like it is the Marvel MCU movie where they really start to do different things with the property. You know, it's not just a superhero movie.
Yeah.
It's a perfectly timed, almost perfectly created black hero.
Yeah.
Now, I am, disclaimer, I'm not American. I'm not African American. I'm a person of color.
Yeah.
But I am not, and there is a distinctly American point of view that I wish we could have had, but
yeah,
we don't know any African American who could have come on this trip. The only one I know is currently in the air flying to America. So, you know, I think she will just about start going into land. So, you know, where the things we're going to say do not represent that viewpoint. They represent our viewpoints.
yes.
But as a person of color, this movie was. I watched it the other night and I cried, and I've seen it about 10 times already.
Yeah.
And I didn't cry because it was sad or because anything. I cried because it presents an ideal that is so far and away from the reality that it just hits different. And it also, given recent stories and recent things that have gone on, especially in American politics, that spark of hope that this film gives is currently being held and cherished very closely by most people of color who know what's going on in America. And we're all hoping and praying that it's not just a token gesture and that it's going to lead to change. And this film taps into that same sense of, could this be it? Could this be, not to be too sentimental, but could this finally be the realization of the dream?
Yeah.
Could we be finally getting to that point where something's going to change?
And
it's a very idealistic thought, but anyone who still has any hope left, and I will grant that might not be everyone, it's there in the back of our hearts and in the depths of our, you know, in the you know, we're cherishing that little flame and keeping it going, and we're hoping and praying. Even the ones who aren't necessarily religious are hoping and praying.
And so this is more of a layman / academic. You know, I can't really call it academic because I'm not an academic, but this is a removed perspective. But I do know that there were, you know, news stories and stuff about like all across the country, you know, black community centers and black churches were busing, you know, youth groups and kids groups to go and see Black Panther.
Yeah. This is a movie, I will say, if you have a child in your life and by some odd situation they haven't seen this film, whether they're white, black, Asian, African, English, European, South Asian, Australian, it doesn't matter. Every child in the world has the right to see this film, and I think every child in the world, in an ideal world, would see it.
I would
say it's a beautiful piece, and it taps into a lot of the hopes and fears of, I think, people of color around the world, regardless of what our actual ethnic makeup is.
Yeah.
This is the one Marvel movie that, to me, that is, you could definitely say is a must-see. I mean, I enjoy all the MCU movies. I just happen to, but a lot of them, as we say, are just good fun popcorn. There's something a bit deeper to this one. It's still fun. It's still a fun movie. Don't get me wrong. This is still a very fun. It's got that fun popcorn element to it as well. But there's something much deeper behind this.
You leave it with something going on in here. rather than just a laugh and a joke afterwards. You carry it with you. And I think if there aren't already, which I'd be very surprised, there will be academic articles, dissertations, books written about the impact of this movie and its place in the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah.
And its place in Black history in general.
Yeah.
Because it does that beautiful thing of, as a person of colour watching it, I find it bittersweet. But it doesn't shy away from the truth.
Yeah.
And it is a tragedy in the traditional sense of what a tragedy is, in that it presents an ideal and points out the difference between what is and what should be. It's a tragic satire in that sense. Because what we're seeing is if you think Africa wasn't okay, maybe not vibranium, but a lot of other minerals and other things, if they'd have had the opportunity to exploit that for themselves rather than deal with colonizers and everything else, the entire world would have looked very different. Just look at what Egypt was doing 3,500 years ago.
Yeah.
Imagine if they'd have been left alone.
And Black Panther, while not being the first black, superhero, he's the first black superhero with superpowers.
Yeah. I will point out as well, I want to tip my hat to Stan Lee.
Yeah.
It took a brave man in 1966 to create a hero like this. A white man to look at this and call out his own privilege and see that this is a hero black kids needed. It had its issues, don't get me wrong, and he stumbled a few times, but quite clearly the intent was there from the start.
I don't know if you want to bring up what Oxus just put in the chat.
I just did.
We had a talk about this on Twitter the other day, didn't we? With this. Now, because there was a talk of renaming the character at some point. I forget what they were going to call the character, but
actually, for a while, in the 70s, like it barely lasted at all. But for a while, they changed Black Panther's name to Black Leopard, and canonically in the comics.
This is why. That's why.
And actually, in the comics, T'Chaka, is like, I'm gonna while I'm with the Avengers, I'm gonna be called Black Leopard because I don't, Basically, Marvel was trying to distance themselves from the Black Panthers, even though the name coincidence is purely coincidence.
I will point out, T'Challa is a moderate. He is very moderate. And he is presented as being very palatable for a white audience. He is very palatable for a white audience. In a franchise this big, I'm not surprised. But he has the power and he uses it, and that's what makes him different.
Yeah.
Just to point out on the historical timeline as well, the Black Panther comic book character predates the Black Panther Party by several months. I think it was I think it was something like June 1966 that Black Panther first appeared in Marvel Comics, and the Black Panther Party was formed October that year.
I Have a Dream was it 63? I feel like it was 6. Yeah, 63. So quite clearly, at least one white person was listening, because Black Panther appeared within a few years. And I think that's very telling that this came out within a few years of the real upsurge of the civil rights movement in America.
And
it's a hats off to Stan Lee for that, because it cannot have been easy as a white person to sit down and say, this is something I have to do and a commentary I have to offer.
Well, and even in the comics, you know, T'Challa was presented as, you know, more palatable to white audiences because
it's going to be though, isn't it?
Yeah.
The target audience of comics is straight white men and kids.
Because he was mentioned as he had been mentioned as like holding doctorates, like in his introduction, mentioned as holding doctorates from like Oxford and Harvard, like a bunch of, you know, prestige Ivy League schools.
Yeah, and that's something I want to. That's a race commentary. That's a commentary on how people of color are viewed.
Yeah.
It's if I go for the same job as a white person, even in Britain, although not so much today, but definitely sort of in the 60s, if I'd have been around and gone in for the same job as a white person, as passing as I am when I haven't seen the sun in 18 months.
Yeah.
You know, I better be twice as qualified as they are and 3 times more willing to work unpaid overtime. You know.
I found a little quote from Stan Lee actually about the motivation here, and it's good. Yeah, this was at a time that they kind of Marvel kind of just even started by just put a few black characters even in his like extras in crowd scenes or whatever, because they hadn't done that before. And Lee actually said that he said this is quote, I wasn't thinking of civil rights. I had a lot of friends who were black and we had artists who were black, so it occurred to me, why aren't there any black heroes?
Exactly.
So it's probably so you know, he wasn't like Stan Lee, you know, he is a sort of, should say, at best you could say centre left his politics, best a little bit liberal or democratic, but he wasn't, you know, he wasn't like a real crusader, but he did have views again on he did definitely have strong views on forms of bigotry, as we know the X-Men was an allegory for
yeah.
And Noodle, you were going to say something?
Yeah, and I just think, again, I cannot overemphasize enough, and this is not to take away from the amazing work that was done in the civil rights movement, but you know how last stream I was talking about straight and cisgender classicists coming out in support of trans rights last week, and what a risk they put their careers on? This is that moment for Stan Lee. Stan Lee,
yeah.
I don't think we can get very complacent in 2020. Think, oh yeah, a movie about a black person is not going to be a big deal. In the 60s, it was a big deal. And I can hear myself echoing, which I'm just going to assume is the technology gods emphasizing what I'm saying. But there are very few big names in the black civil rights movement in America of white people that you can stand up and say, that person used their platform for good. But I definitely think Stan Lee's one of them. Like Stan Lee, and he within his own remit as well. Comic books traditionally aimed at white males have their issues in their audience. We know this. We know what comic book stands can be like. So for him to have done that in the 60s, I just hats off to the dude for standing up for what he clearly believed was the right thing to do in his own way.
Can I just tell you a funny little story about it's one or two things Stan Lee would do on the Spider-Man comics. Now, the guy who he co-created Spider-Man was Steve Ditko, who was also I think a co-creator of Doctor Strange, I think. Steve Ditko, should just say his politics somewhat towards the crazy right wing, to be honest. And he would, and the thing was, he did something once where he put something that there was a group of protesters or something, and Steve Ditko was originally doing the story, put something sort of in like some right wing thing, bunch of bloody rabble rousers. So Stanley would go along and change the bubble with like Spider-Man, saying, "Hey, it's with you guys." He would do that to fuck with Steve Ditko at times. So
yeah.
So, but let's get to the movie proper.
Yeah.
Lads.
So, and the movie opens in like, I'm gonna say, the perfect way for the movie.
Yeah, I love this. I love how it harkens back to oral tradition, which is a lot of how African history has been passed down because of colonization and other issues. So the idea that it's this beautiful, it really harks back to the idea of the medicine man or the tribal elders passing the story along, and I love it.
Also, it's the tell me a story of home.
Yeah, of home.
Yeah.
And again, as I have a particular viewpoint on this, as the child of a immigrant on at least one side and the grandchild on another, I was always desperate as a child to hear stories about Poland, about Jamaica, about India, because that's where my family were from. And it's really hard to explain to people who aren't mixed race how that feels, and who haven't been born outside of where they're from. But there is a real desperation to know where you're from. And I can only imagine that for the African American diaspora in America who were dragged there against their will and have gone through so much, that is only magnified. And I'm sat here and I don't know if you can tell, but my eyes are glassy just thinking about it. That kid it's like that's a bedtime story for kids who are raised in cultures outside of their own. Tell me about home. Tell me about our heroes and our past and the things I have to be proud of that the people out there tell me I should be ashamed of. That's what's going on in that scene with that kid. I grew up hearing how Poles are coming over here, stealing jobs, claiming benefits and this. And I came home and I said, Dad, tell me about how Poland fought for itself in the Second World War. Tell me about how Poland existed even when it didn't exist on any map. Tell me about how we survived. These are the stories that I clung to when the world was telling me that part of my identity wasn't anything to be proud of. And that's what this kid is doing in that scene, and it's beautiful. And it really is that. And again, it's that oral tradition that is passed down and becomes its own mythology over time.
And there's a bittersweet juxtaposition because there's a lot of symmetry and juxtaposition in this movie with because spoilers for an award-winning blockbuster that's 2 years old.
Yeah.
Or almost 3 years old. 3-ish years old now. One of Eric Killmonger's last lines, of the movie is, imagine me, a kid in Oakland, still believing in fairy tales.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know how I talked about that little flame of hope that we're all carrying? We still believe in the fairy tale. We still believe in the dream. That's what that's a reference to. That and this thing of the way he died, which I'm sure we'll get to, is a whole other thing, and an entire discussion on honourable deaths and honouring the ancestors. But yeah, it's that little flame of hope. That's what that is. It's the fairy tale. We know it's the fairy tale. It's the American pipe dream.
Yeah. And
but
it's
you've got to. Yeah.
I was going to say as well. I mean, I think it's quite an interesting. Which again, it really sends a good sort of idea. In a way, it sends a good ideal for this nation that was formed, Wakanda, that is able to develop technologically way ahead of everyone else, yet chooses very much an isolationist policy and not an imperialistic.
Noodle has notes about this.
I have notes.
Yeah,
I have notes.
I'll just get my thought out and then let Noodle go. And and the fact that he's like said that, and they shield themselves from colonialism by basically pretending that they are poor and have nothing. Although looking at them, I can tell you now, had the British colonials gone in there with a Henry Martini rifle or whatever, the Wakandans would have kicked their fucking ass. I will tell you that now.
Yeah. There's a specific point to be made. Wakanda developed the way it did specifically because it was never colonized. And that's an important commentary on Africa and on African nations.
Yeah. There was
because we know historically, and we just objectively we know, Africa it still is to an extent, an incredibly mineral resource rich continent. There is no reason anyone on Africa shouldn't be as rich as every Arab sheikh out there. But because the Germans, the British, later the Americans, the Spanish, the Portuguese, the Dutch,
Belgians,
the Belgians, the French, all went in there. And frankly, and I am going to use a very loaded term, but I think it warrants it, frankly, raped the continent and then left it to die. That's why Africa's in the state it's in.
Absolutely.
And Africa, this whole thing about the African map is bullshit. Anywhere you see straight lines on a map, they were drawn by colonizers. Don't at me. Okay? But the Wakanda, again, they defined their own borders, they defined their own land, and having that control and being able to basically spend what is quite clearly at least 2,000 years, if not longer, saying basically fuck white people and we will live our lives our way, clearly worked for them. So, that's just an entire thing. I'm glad you opened that up for me, because I've literally got it here. Wakanda has not been colonized.
Yeah, I was going to say it was a brilliant quote by a film critic called Manola Dargis. I'm sorry, I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. I apologise. But said Black Panther is an emblem of a past that was denied and in a future that feels very present to Africans, which is a and I thought that was quite a powerful quote for a film critic about this.
Yeah, definitely. Africa's history was stolen from it, and we see the results every day.
Yeah.
And this is an example of what might have happened had people just not been so greedy in history. And I'm not just saying white people, because, the Spanish weren't white, the Portuguese weren't white, but just in general, the colonizer mentality fucked Africa. Fucked a lot of other places as well, but it's relevant that we say fucked Africa as a continent.
And there is at least the movie alludes to
very well,
a darker side to this isolationism that has kind of turned into a certain aloofness.
Yeah, this commentary from if you allow the comment was passed, if you let in refugees, they bring their problems with them.
Yeah, well, and it demonstrates this by opening in Oakland with Eric's father.
Immediately you've got gun violence, poverty. The kids are playing in a foot club baseball court. The building's condemned. It's just all, it really highlights that when Black people are not in control of their own situation, they fall to the bottom and they hit rock bottom.
And Eric's father, is trying to do something about it by having stolen vibranium from Wakanda to arm, to arm the populace to fight for more equality.
Look, I'm going to say it. This quote was first, I think, said in reference to Nelson Mandela, but one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. That's what's going on with that whole subplot.
Yes.
And there comes a point, I mean, maybe after this film, especially, we saw it last summer. We saw it. One man's terror, they were calling protesters terrorists, but one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter.
Yeah.
And that is where the real issue lays in American society, that it hasn't realized the difference between people fighting for their right to exist and people fighting for their right to remain the dominant race.
Yeah. And
I feel like it's important to address the fact that Wakanda didn't take in refugees.
Yeah.
It's very isolationist, as Scummer said. I'm glad you used that word because I couldn't remember what it was. I've just put in Wakanda doesn't take refugees. It's kind of... Honestly, I'm going to make a historical comparison, but I don't want you to take it verbatim. I want you to take it as a very generalized comment of the plot of this movie.
Yeah.
It's America moving away from isolationism into the Marshall Plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what's going on with this plot. He goes from isolationist, not our problem, to, let's talk sharing information, sharing resources, sharing weapons, this, that, and the other. That's... I don't like to make the historical comparison because there's major issues with the race aspect and other things, but on a very broad spectrum, that's what's going on with this plot.
And, with this opening, where T'Chaka visits his brother.
Yeah.
Once again, spoilers for a movie that you probably should have seen already.
Yeah.
Everything's stealth where you barely see the lights from the Wakandan airship. Like, the only one who notices is young Killmonger, who already knows about Wakanda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the way the movie closes with T'Challa returning to Oakland and how it's, it is now out in the open, they are now out in the open.
Yeah. And it's that sense of, you could almost see Wakanda building an empire. on the back of this, and becoming as relevant in the modern day as America became after the Marshall Plan. And that's kind of what I'm getting at with that more than anything else. Right, okay, yeah. Sorry, I'm just watching the comments as well, I will say.
All right.
Yeah, Tusk. I was born in Britain. I don't particularly consider myself English, but yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's not for me to apologise, but I'm sorry anyway.
Maybe just a little reminder that it isn't just far off places that are geographically far off, like to us, like in Africa and Asia, that it's a little fucking closer to home with us.
Yeah, a hell of a I mean, America's got South America on the doorstep and the Caribbean on the doorstep. We've got Ireland on the doorstep.
Yeah.
Historically, there are issues. That
unfortunately still exist to this day, and it's probably not the stream to dive deep into them, I would have thought.
And
not the stream to get into the troubles in Ireland, because that's an entirely different stream.
So we're after T'Chaka kills Eric's father, we jump to present day where we're given a brief recap of what happened in Captain America Civil War in so far as it impacts this story.
Yeah, because of course in the MCU, I was going to say, sorry, in the MCU, of course, Black Panther is introduced as a character in Captain America Civil War. And and you see the death of in that movie. Of course, you see the death of King T'Chaka, and T'Challa takes on the mantle of the Black Panther. And initially, obviously, you don't get too much into it, but in Captain America Civil War, he's out mainly for justice for his father, and obviously initially thinks the Winter Soldier was the one that killed his father, even though it was not the Winter Soldier. But anyway,
that's another discussion. But the only reason I brought up the news clips is because the news clips and every other white character, with the exception of Claw, refers to Wakanda as a third world country.
Okay, first of all, that term, if you ever see it on a news site, a video, a documentary that was created after 2005, don't trust it. I was studying geography at GCSE, and I'm giving away my age here, so no one count back. In 2008, 9-ish, and literally we were being told then, we don't call them third world countries anymore. They are less economically or more economically developed countries. That term was out of date 12 years ago. So, anyone who uses that term is using it for a very political reason, and usually it's to prop up white supremacy and to prop up the colonizer concepts. So just
just thought I'd put that in the chat. Tusk, not you, mate. It's just we have a tendency to sometimes go off on tangents. Probably not a good one to go down. Tusk, absolutely. That's why shit happened in Ireland too. It happens, and this is what we're getting at. The colonizer mentality isn't just Africa, that it does it too. That's why I mentioned the Middle East as well. That's why I mentioned South Asia. Yeah,
it happens everywhere, and it's always the same. It's like that meme from Harry Potter where she says, "Why is it always you three?" And you three in this situation is like the UK, France, and Spain as colonizers. Why is it always you three?
Yeah.
It just, yeah. Oh.
And then we have the opening action sequence of the movie.
Yeah.
Which honestly, in my opinion, this is one of the scenes where Black Panther lifts from another franchise and just does it better.
It does that a lot, so you're going to have to be really specific.
Yeah, so in this scene specifically, Black Panther did Batman better than Batman.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so, and we see more how, what Wakanda is non-interventional, is isolationist unless it has to do with their specific interests.
Mm. Yeah. It's a fair comment.
Yeah.
And I think, given what happened to the rest of Africa, Wakanda is more than justified.
Yeah.
I have my issue. This is why I said don't take my comparison to the Marshall Planners. Because I have my issues with America and the Marshall Plan and the isolationism of that. Because that wasn't, we're protecting ourselves from colonizers. That was greed and self-interest. Whereas Wakanda, I don't like that it was isolationist. I think it could have done a lot of good a lot sooner. But that is addressed in the film as well. So I can go with it.
And we also get to, we get our first bit of, characterization from, from the multiple direction tug of war that is essentially the conflict of this movie is, and what direction should Wakanda go now that T'Challa is king?
Yeah, it's a tradition versus progress. It's isolation versus expansion. There's all this going on.
And, we see our first, we're first introduced to, Nakia. who stops T'Challa from killing the youngest member because he was a boy who was kidnapped just like the rest of them.
Yeah. And I will just say this. When I was growing up, the girl every girl wanted to be was Hermione Granger.
Yeah.
If you're a kid now, your daughter, if she's cisgender, should want to be Nakia. That's how that should be going down. If she's not, show her this film again. Nakia is just, and seriously, that's for your trans daughters as well. So yeah. But I think even your boys should want to be Nakia a little bit. To be honest, all your kids should want to be Nakia. Sorry, I'm fangirling, Anna.
Yeah.
I just love her. She's amazing, and she is the heart of this movie.
Yeah.
She's the. When you talk about heroic groups as a trope, you have your Lancer, your leader, your Lorna, she's the heart.
Yeah.
And I think it's beautiful that she's also the technical center of it. She's the Q.
Okay, no, you're getting mixed up.
Sorry, no. Nakia
is the spy.
Nakia is the girlfriend, not the sister, right?
Yeah, the girlfriend.
But Nakia's the heart.
Yeah.
But the sister carries it as well.
Yeah.
And I think it says a lot that I had those two mixed up for a second.
Yeah.
Because this is what that film does really well. It presents you character archetypes and then gives them just enough of their own to differentiate them.
Yeah.
and their race is never what differentiates them. And I love it. I love it. I just
So
but yeah.
Since you were fangirling about Shuri,
Shuri, just okay. I'm gonna let you go first with the fangirling and get the punning out of the way.
Okay, the sneakers joke. But first, our first introduction to Shuri is, after they get Nakia and they land by the palace, and you get you get sibling energy from from Chadwick Boseman, T'Challa and Shuri. So
and then you also get the mother.
Yeah.
It's just fantastic. Sorry, mother.
Yeah.
And she doesn't even turn around. I love it. And this is leading into a discussion. We can talk about Shuri, but I also want to talk about the women in this film.
Yes.
As a whole ass thing. Wow. It's so nice as, an AFAB person of colour to see women kicking ass and taking names.
Yeah.
And really doing it in a way that is so quintessentially not white, and they're not sexualized, and it's not because they're not a strong female character. They're just characters, and I just
basically the opposite of what was going on in the last stream.
This is why I meant we get a palate cleanser. This is what I look like when I fangirl, by the way, folks. Don't worry, I'm not dying.
Maybe a little.
Tiny bit. Well done.
Yeah.
But yeah, Shuri is... I love how T'Challa and Shuri kind of represent... If you get T'Challa and Shuri, what you have is the generational progression of the mentality. So you have T'Chaka, who's very traditional, upright, set in his ways.
Yeah.
Then you've got T'Challa, who holds to his traditions and loves his traditions, but is just flexible enough to know when they're not the right thing, and goes through that growth within the plot of the film.
Yeah.
Then you have Shuri, who basically her idea of tradition is progress.
Yeah.
And I think she represents such a hope for what anyone who has a kid or looks at kids thinks. She's a hope in a better future. And she's building a better future. She's actively doing it.
I know it's a bit sad, but one of my favourite bits of the movie is when she flips the birds to her brother.
Yeah.
And the mother's like, Shuri, even though she...
Sorry, Mother.
Sorry, Mother. Yeah.
The thing is...
I love it.
I do love... They have real sibling energy. So, they've got that going on. When he's trying out the suits and she films him, you know, they're constantly just.
Well, we're gonna put a pin in that scene.
Yeah,
yeah.
So
she's just the women in this film.
Can I actually? Because I know we got to get to this character in a bit. I'd say the closest you get to, and I don't even necessarily know if a stereotype is the right way to say this, but a trope, or should we say, would be the Andy Serkis's character, Ulysses Claw.
Okay.
Yeah, and the reason I say this, the South African who's a mercenary stroke arms dealer type,
the colonizer.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing is, even in the comics, Ulysses Claw, from what little of Black Panther comic lore I unfortunately know, I mean, unfortunately, in that I know so little.
Mm.
You know, Ulysses Claw was the earliest enemy of Black Panther, and he was very much you could call him like a symbol of the colonizing European.
Yeah,
Definitely. He is
Because he's always been a vibranium pirate.
Yeah.
He wants Wakanda's resources for himself, and he doesn't care about Wakanda or Wakanda's people.
And you get you get the feeling that you definitely get the feeling the way that he's portrayed in this, that he's a product of apartheid South Africa, and and obviously people know a little bit of the history. Yeah, there's a kind of a bit of a reason for the sort of trope of him being like a little bit of a. You get the feeling he's been like a mercenary stroke arms dealer type, and things that he's let's just say around the end of the apartheid era, there's some of the earliest, should we say, private armies in the world were former South African soldiers. People know about the fact that they were kind of hired in Sierra Leone for a while. Again,
he's a historically grounded character.
Yeah, see the movie Blood Diamonds, which is
actually this is a good time to bring up Claw, because it's about this part of the movie where we get the scene at the British Museum.
Yes.
Do I need the hissy fit banner again?
I think I can control myself, but keep your finger on it just in case.
Yeah.
The British Museum is a symbol and a representative of all that is wrong with the colonizer mentality. And it clings, and this is real life, I'm not talking about it in the film, it clings to that. Because the British Museum knows that if it only had British artifacts, it wouldn't be much of a museum. Yeah. And as much as claw stealing from the British Museum is an insult twice over. It's an insult that he stole from something that's trying to build a history. It's also an insult because those things were stolen initially, which we hear about later. I'm also going to say I am pretty sure it was deliberate, because they quite clearly had no shortage of black actors.
Yeah.
Pretty damn sure it was deliberate that all the staff in the British Museum were white.
Yeah.
That's a commentary. That's an entire fucking commentary, especially right now, because the British Museum are fighting to keep the Elgin marbles, which they have no right to.
Yeah. And, it opens with Eric asking, asking the what's the word? Yeah, the curator about the masks. And then
it's,
and then we get to the vibranium warhammer,
and he corrects
her. And because I like the fact that it's like that she's there, but I'm going to give it's not really expressed, but it's like, I'm going to educate this black guy.
This oik. Let's be honest, he's an oik. Yeah.
And
he walks in there in a hoodie and jeans and shit. He says, "You've had eyes on me since I walked in." They think he's a thief, is what he's insinuating there.
Yeah.
He's not allowed to look at his own history because of white people who've stolen it. That's what's happening in that scene. He's been made to feel unwelcome in a building dedicated to the history of his people.
And then he says, that you didn't notice what you were putting into your own body.
Yeah.
I could just say, I want to just say to this moment now, okay, before we say it, how damn good was Michael B. Jordan in this movie?
Yeah.
As Eric Killmonger. How awesome was he?
I cried.
Well, I mean,
I laughed, I cried, I cheered, I hated him for a moment. Yeah.
I mean,
Boseman got Best Actor, but I think only because he was the lead part. Otherwise, Jordan would have got it.
Well, I mean, the MCU kind of has this thing about taking former Human Torches and just redeeming them, because we had Chris Evans, who was previously the Human Torch in the first two Fantastic Four movies.
Yeah.
Who got recast as Captain America.
That's where I've seen him before.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He was the
flame on guy. Yeah.
The flame on guy. Flame on, flame off.
And then in the, dumpster fire of the Fan Force Stick movie, we had Michael B. Jordan, who was cast as the Human Torch, and then he was recast as Eric in this, in Black Panther, and killed it in this role.
Yeah. I like him as an actor anyway, that guy. I think, the two Creed movies, he's very good. So.
I mean, I'm going to say it. I think, especially if you watch the extras, this comes across a lot, that the African-American actors in this film took part in this film knowing that they were doing something special, knowing that this was something for them and for their people. They brought their A game and they smashed it.
I just want to actually cite some of the references here that Michael B. Jordan said that things that he studied for this movie. Now, he said partly Heath Ledger's Joker, he said partly, but he said he sat down and he studied works of Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, Huey Newton, Fred Hampton, and even Tupac.
And I will say
really
as well,
immersed himself in studying that.
I will say as well, and this might be controversial, so I have to think about how I'm going to word it. I've got it here. I've literally written down, and again, there's nuance to this, so don't take it as an all-out statement. Killmonger equals Malcolm X.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is Malcolm X was a radical. Malcolm X was ready to stand up and say, no, you fight. You don't take it. There's no such thing as peaceful protest in a war.
Right.
And Killmonger definitely has that radicalism to him. And I think, especially now, especially given last year, there is a place for that level of radicalism.
Yeah.
Not black supremacy, but definitely radical anti-racism.
I'd go even maybe more. I'd say even maybe a little more ironically that he studied Huey Newton and Fred Hampton, Black Panthers.
Yeah.
For this role.
Well, Malcolm X is the person everyone has heard of, who's the radical, the token radical, if you like, in the civil rights history lessons. But and I do find it amusing that the character whose name is not Black Panther is the one most ideologically aligned with the Black Panthers.
Yeah.
There's a nice bit of irony in that.
Yeah.
And of course, you've got but the museum heist is a great scene.
It is. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
The thing is, as well, it's even though it's Killmonger and it's Claw and all that's going on.
Yeah.
The fact that it's a black guy. had he not passed that on to Claw, that would have been a massive, like, holy shit, are we allowed to do that? Are we allowed to just take back what's ours?
Well, so here's the thing.
But
okay, I'm gonna say that it's probably it probably works best the way it was filmed. So he takes the vibranium axe or hammer.
Mm.
Claw breaks the handle off it.
Mm.
And then and then there's the bet with the mask.
Yeah.
And Claw's like, "Oh, you're telling me? Oh, don't tell me that's vibranium too, because Claw is only in it for the money." And he says, "Nah, I'm just feeling it," and he takes the mask.
The mask. You know what those masks are, don't you?
Yeah.
They're tribal masks.
Yeah.
They are part of history. They are akin, I would say, in importance to a death mask to an ancient Roman, or to put it in a modern context, it's like someone stole the last photograph you had of your sainted granny and you've just taken it back.
Yeah.
It's sainted granny's wedding ring. It's he doesn't take that mask for any reason but that there is something in him that calls to his own history. He has no other reason to take that mask. And the fact that he wears it, he is declaring loud and proud, this is who I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is my identity. Now, is he misguided? Is he radical? Yes. But he's grown up with stories of Wakanda and what Wakanda is.
Yeah.
And he's doing his best. And he sees Wakanda as an opportunity.
Yeah.
And it's almost got the vibe of, and again, nuance, folks, of what I'm about to say, but back to Africa.
Yeah.
But I don't mean when white people said, send them back to Africa. I mean when black people looked and said, no, we want to go home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the vibe that is. That's finding the headstone of an ancestor you didn't know existed and being able to put flowers on the grave. That's the significance of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this was a big. I mean, like I said, one of the guys that he studied was Marcus Garvey. That was a very big Marcus Garvey sort of thing.
Yeah.
And what I kind of like about the sort of dynamic that goes on with Claw and Eric at the time is it's the whole feeling that you certainly Claw thinks he's the one in control there,
but
Eric is the one who's really in control. But I don't want to use the I don't want to use the, shall we say, but the words, but the certain word that South Afrikaans people maybe used to use about black people. He's probably had that. Oh, he's a dumb, that sort of thing. And
you can insert
really,
any slur you like there for it to make sense.
Yeah, insert ones, but the insult, the South African insult, which I will not use, because it is a racial slur. But you get that feeling. Claw's got that feeling. He's the one in control. Really, Eric's the one in control. Really, there. Claw's a means to an end for Eric.
Yeah, and Eric's goal is more than just a hammerhead.
Yeah.
And this is, again, it's harking back to that old, and it's kind of got a bit of a situation comedy, upstairs, downstairs, rising damp sort of feel to it, of the underdog getting the better out of the person who thinks they're in control. So, you saw it off the top of my head to kind of compare it. There's a lot of moments in season 1 of Roots where they kind of get one over on the White Masters.
Yeah.
Just little victories. and he's got that vibe to it, and it's good.
I've got to say, I loved the rising damp analogy as well there, because of with the
prince, taking the mickey out the landlord.
Very quickly, Rising Damp was a British sitcom, and there's a number of characters in it. The landlord, this group of flats, there was a guy called Rigsby who was who was just a bigot or whatever, and one of his tenants is this black student called Philip, who's come over from he is some sort of royalty or whatever. And Rigsby's got every damn sort of silly stereotype about black people there is going. Yet every single it's the whole thing of
every episode Philip gets one over on him. Every
single time. And Philip gets the better of Rigsby.
That as well, while we're on Philip and Rigsby, because there's a joke in Philip and Rigsby where there's a point where Philip convinces Rigsby that he's a cannibal.
Yeah.
And that joke is made in this film.
Yeah.
Where M'Baku says, shut up or I will feed you to my children. And then, don't worry, we're vegetarian.
Yeah.
They know what the world is like beyond Wakanda. They know. And they find it brutally hilarious at how wrong people are about them.
And so actually, this is a good transit or a good segue into talking about the challenge scene.
Yeah, right. The challenge scene is
the first challenge scene.
Yeah, the first challenge scene is both a traditional hero's journey.
Yeah.
And it's a traditional rite of passage in the hero's journey. He has to show strength on his own merit, not just inherited royalty. But this is kind of the refusal of that call.
Yeah.
It's the refusal of the call in the hero's journey, because he doesn't kill, he doesn't have to fight.
Yeah.
And he accepts the challenge, he fights, he wins. Duh. But he doesn't kill.
Yeah.
And it's so important in that moment that he doesn't kill, because at that moment he's still naive, he's still idealistic, and even though he's lost his father, he still hasn't had his eyes opened to what his people are going through in America.
Yeah.
And it's Killmonger who opens his eyes to that. So it's so important in that moment that he doesn't kill.
And also, this is where we get our, in-character introduction, because they are mentioned in the beginning opening narration, but, the actual first appearance of M'Baku and the Jabari.
Yeah.
Now, in the comics, M'Baku, it is basically just like kind of a constant foil to T'Challa. Constantly trying to overthrow him and take the throne for himself. And, and he goes under the moniker of the White Gorilla. I like how they didn't keep with that. I mean, they kind of kept with it, but I like how Yeah.
He's the Scottish king to the English king.
Yeah.
That's what's going on there.
Yeah.
That's where my brain went. It is very much, it's that we're both on the same land and where we have different ideologies. And it does feel like M'Baku and the, what's the tribe name? Jabari.
Yeah.
They kind of feel like, listen, I'm a northerner. And my attitude of London doesn't give a fuck about anything outside of Watford Gap. That's his attitude. He's looking at T'Challa and T'Chaka and saying, you haven't been to my home. Your people haven't been to my home in centuries, and yet you rule us, basically, is what's going on there. So I kind of have some sympathy for him.
Yeah, well,
in that regard. I think he's a good man. He comes from a different point of view of T'Challa.
Yeah. Well, and also he's another, he's another bit of this multi-directional tug of war where he is ultra traditionalism. Because the reason he cites for the challenge is your technological advancements are being overseen by a child with no respect for tradition.
Yeah. And it is very much a case of, if you come from a less economically developed area of a country, you see another area running ahead, you look at it and you think, they don't care about our tradition. It's kind of, to put it in an American context, it's sort of, if Thomas Jefferson saw what life was like today, or someone who held Jeffersonian ideals, it's a Jeffersonian ideals versus progressive politics is what's going on there. He believes in, staying rural, staying isolationist, and just getting on with it. And yet they're putting the future of the country in the hands of a child. And it's like, are you right in the head? Is what's going on there? Because from the outside, you can imagine that people would think that, and it's valid.
And it's very telling that M'Baku only yields after T'Challa cites his people.
Yeah, your people need you.
Yeah.
T'Challa respects the cultural difference. M'Baku respects the cultural difference. His issue is, it is very much, it's a case of, why the hell are distant diplomats in a foreign country making laws?
Yeah.
Is his attitude. And I can't argue with that, because that's my attitude in real life.
Is he a Brexiteer then?
I think he would be, wouldn't he? But
he
I think
might probably be a Brexiteer.
But I think he'd be a Brexiteer in the way I'm a Brexiteer of, he wants sovereignty for his home nation, he wants devolution, and he wants to look after the people who are actually on his doorstep.
Yeah.
And race doesn't come into it. It's about looking after people on a local level.
But yeah, so, from in the adaptation from page to screen, we got, M'Baku, on the page was like just a warlord scheming for the throne to Scottish king versus English king.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a definite positive improvement. Yeah. It gives him more depth as a character. Sorry if you can hear that dog barking in my background.
Yeah.
He has a valid point of view, and the thing is that's what this film does really well. T'Chaka, Eric, M'Baka, they all have valid points of view about the future of this country.
Yeah.
They are all, it is kind of the four of them, if you put them in a room, you would come out with a Brexit discussion.
Yeah.
It kind of is the Brexit discussion going on the big screen. It's sort of, where do we go from here? What do we do? How do we proceed? And you've got your traditionalist, your moderate, your radical, and your person who wants devolution and sovereignty, which they're all valid points of view. And it's the fact that they all manage to come together and create something that is a combination of all the best of those ideas. That is the strength of Wakanda in the end.
Yeah.
We hope. Although I don't entirely trust that the Americans in the Marvel universe won't try to invade anyway, but
yeah,
that's because of real life issues.
So anything more to mention about the challenge scene or the first challenge scene?
The first
Not
challenge
on this
scene,
one, I haven't, but
I think the thing that it's not said outright, but T'Challa fights with a handicap. And I mean handicap as in horse racing, not as in... because not only does... I'm going to call it a potion, because seriously, it's bright purple. Not only does the potion take away the power of the Black Panther, you can see it visibly weakens him. It's physically painful for him.
I've just seen who's in the chat, and I said, I hope we do a good job here, Esther.
Yeah, I hope we're doing a good job here.
I hope we are doing a good job on this one, because
and you're not too late. We have at least another hour or so to go.
Yeah,
depending on how much
you're a little more qualified to talk about Africa than any of us. So,
yeah. I mean, if have either of you got African Humanist on Twitter? I'm just thinking if you want to pop in, it'd be nice to get a point of view.
Esther, let us know in the chat if you want to come in. I'll send you the link.
Yeah, just a thought if you want to do it, because it'd be nice to get another person of colour's point of view in here.
Oops,
and someone who's probably a lot closer to it than I am. As much as I'm fangirling and adore this film.
So, and you know, we get to the next couple of scenes where I'm gonna say it. Black Panther does James Bond better than James Bond. I'm talking about the lab scene with Shuri.
Yeah.
Followed by the casino scene.
Yes. Okay. Now, yes. Okay. One at a time. First of all, the lab scene.
Yeah.
Not only is it a classic Bond meets Q moment.
Yeah.
Bond and Q don't really have that sibling rivalry.
Yeah.
And the sibling rivalry and humor makes this scene fantastic. I adore it.
Yeah.
And also,
where are you recording? Oh, it's for research.
For research purposes. For research.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. And this girl, I cannot, again, girls looking at this, I can be into science, I can be into computers, I can do tech. That's an amazing message to be sending to young girls. Because I assure you, as someone raised and socialized AFAB, we didn't get it much.
Can I just say one of the things you mentioned, the Q James Bond analogy there. What I love about this is almost the roles of Q and James Bond get flipped there. Because how many of the James Bond movies does Bond's come in and when Q is trying to show him one of his gadgets or something, Bond kind of uses it as a bit of an opportunity to make fun of Q.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here it's like the shoe is on the other foot.
Yeah.
You got the person, she's like the Q character. She's using this as a chance to have a bit of fun of the James Bond kind of character. So
and it also feeds into that. It does feed into T'Challa's character as he puts up with this. He's a loving brother.
Yeah.
And he has a sense of humor about himself. Doesn't take himself too seriously, even though he's a king. But also, he still has those traditionalist ideas.
Yeah. Also,
and you kind of see him develop through the film on the technology as well, as he goes from "I don't need anything new" to "Hey, jump in this like magic car and drive it for me."
Yeah.
And he grows in that way. But yeah, I adore Shuri. She's amazing.
Yeah. So
I didn't know you knew African Humanist, or I would have told you to get her in here.
I've had her on my channel.
Jeff knows her. I'm very much on
Yeah.
the periphery of like everyone, so I only really know like a few
Esther's
people.
Yeah, I know of these
Esther's
people.
Esther's awesome. So
Yeah. And it's the thing with Shuri is as well the way he behaves with Shuri. Yes, they're siblings, but you see it with him, and you kind of see it in the way he talks to his other friends as well. To me, now bearing in mind that I'm mixed race, so any observations I have about Black culture are kind of on the periphery.
Yeah.
That the way he interacts is very Black to me. He's just, he doesn't take himself too seriously. He's chilled out. Like, he's just very, he's animated in a way that you don't see in white characters in TV either.
Yeah.
And he just, there's a great sort of thing, and you'll see if you see any group of Black people laughing and telling a joke, watch out for it, where someone will tell a joke and everyone starts laughing, but they don't just laugh, they lean back and they move away as if they need more space to put the laughter into, as if the laughter needs more space around them.
Yeah.
And they own the space around them, and I love seeing that. And they own it as a unit, but as individuals as well. I saw it watching the result of the Chauvin trial. The family did it, and it was just, everyone's just, and that to me is something that I grew up with. It's part of Black culture, and I saw Black people do it, and I didn't see white people do it. You know, and it's very, to me, it's just so human and it's so fun, because it really is that moment of just owning the situation, but owning it in a way that is unique and happy, and really allowing themselves to feel happiness no matter how serious they have to take themselves. Like, can you imagine, most traditionally, if you thought of a king figure, if someone took the mickey out of him for his sandals, they'd be on the chopping block.
Yeah.
And he just laughs it off and he goes with it.
Yeah.
Because it's his sister and he loves her, but also he knows that his sandals do look a bit ridiculous.
Yeah. Also, he knows that he's in her lab.
Yeah. Like, this is her space.
Yeah.
He's a guest here right now. And he knows that. And he knows she says don't touch and he listens.
Yeah.
And it especially as well, a character who has, by rights of family, by rights of law, and by rights of combat, has earned his position as someone who has power and control over her, still respecting her space and her area of expertise. As an AFAB person, but also as a person of colour, that we need to see more of that in the world.
Yeah.
He does the opposite of mansplaining.
Yeah.
Basically. And he's very, positive, and it's just nice to see someone who doesn't suddenly become king and then get all stiffy and lose their personality.
Yeah. So
I fangirl a lot about this one. You're gonna have to cut me off eventually. We're gonna go for 4 hours.
Yeah. So the casino scene, which, like I said, in which Black Panther does James Bond better than James Bond.
Yes, and do you know why it does that? Because it doesn't allow any of the dealers to speak. Is the first thing. None of them are mistaking trips for sets, and it doesn't show any of them dealing, which is probably a good thing unless they were actually in a casino. Because rant on Casino Royale and that opening scene is legendary. Don't at me.
One dealer does do some speaking.
Yeah, but
the Stan Lee cameo.
Yeah, the Stan Lee cameo. Yeah, that I can live with that. That was fun.
I'll just keep these safe.
Yeah. But it's very, and I like that there was the whole thing with the casino. If you walked into a casino like that in Vegas, you would think it was in Vegas.
Yeah.
It's even though it's just a back alley thing, it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
But we can't talk about the casino and not talk about the fight.
Yeah.
Hello. And I want to talk about the women in this fight and the way, and I'm sure Esther has comments on this, the way Black female identity is explored in this fight with the wig.
What fight?
In the casino.
Yeah, we're talking about Black Panther, the 2018 Marvel movie.
Yeah. So the TLDR is they have to go undercover, and she dresses up and she looks very American in that she wears a wig that's kind of blonde, straight haired, and she's wearing this sort of red dress that
I haven't watched it.
Curves.
I haven't watched it in ages. It's been a while. I haven't seen it in ages. My goodness, I can't remember that scene.
Yeah, no, but she passes the comment of, "Do I have to wear this wig?"
Right.
And obviously in Wakanda, her rank is sort of shaved into her hair, and her hair is a very important part of her identity.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And yet the minute her cover is blown in the casino, even before she reaches for her spear, the first thing she does is take this wig and throw it in a white man's face. And I love it. I think it's just fantastic. I adore that moment. Sorry, I fangirl about this film a lot.
Yeah.
I heard you say you're mixed race, Noodle. Are you mixed race?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wow. That's interesting.
Yeah, so my mum was Jamaican Indian, my dad's Polish.
Wow. I'd never have guessed that.
A lot of people don't, although to be fair, I haven't been in the sun in so long that probably makes a difference. Because I get very dark very quickly, but then I lose my colour very quickly as well. But yeah, someone please take over from me and talk about female identity and specifically Black female identity in this film, because I have so many feelings, but I don't have the words because it's just amazing.
So, which one is it? The Black Panther.
Yes.
Oh yeah, some really strong female characters in that film. Really strong.
Yeah, and I don't think any one of them hit all the tick boxes to become an archetype either. So Shuri is, yes, she's kind of she's not the obedient daughter. She's definitely not the obedient daughter, but she's the younger. Then you've got the mother, who is a very upright mother, but even she's got a sense of humor and a softness to her that we don't see. You've got the soldiers; they're still women. They are not. Hollywood has this habit with female fighters of just making them basically men with vaginas and boobs, and doesn't really flesh out how that impacts, how being a fighter impacts their femininity in any way.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas this film, these fighters are women.
Yeah.
And they are women as much as they are fighters. You know, they don't like the wigs, they don't like wearing the fancy dresses, they prefer their uniform. They fight with spears. Even the way they fight, the formations they're fighting, and everything else is very, very informed by the fact that this is women doing the fighting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think I know it's a film, but I would like to have a bit more of that in everyday life. In having women, especially Black women, have more power, and just to feel that they can do things, to feel like they can say not I was going to say take over the world, but no, that's not going to happen. But just to feel empowered, you know?
Yeah. And that's what I mean. That's what I meant by if your daughter doesn't want to be Shuri, something's wrong. If she doesn't want to be Nakia, something's wrong. Because
she doesn't want to be Okoye. Something's wrong.
Oh yes, Okoye. Remember? Yeah.
All these women, these ideals for girls to look up to, and I can't think. I've come up in the generation that this is kind of aimed at. I can't think of a African or black character, except maybe that Disney princess that came out a few years ago.
Oh yeah,
Princess
Tangled?
and the Frog.
Yeah, Tangled.
Princess and the Frog.
Yeah, Princess and the Frog. She was a black character, and
was Beyonce in that movie?
I don't know. I haven't actually really seen it.
Yeah,
I think she was.
Yeah, but you kind of there was that, and then unless you want to talk about anthropomorphized lions in The Lion King, because we're not counting Pocahontas. Let's not
go down that route.
Let's not go down that route. There really wasn't anything for an entire generation of girls of color.
Yeah.
And then now there's this. And I genuinely watched this movie and wish I was 10 years younger and had seen this sort of 10, 15 years ago.
And once again, I'm going to have to say that this is a very good adaptation from page to film, where they kind of improve things a little bit. Once again, admittedly, I am way too unread on the Black Panther comics, but I know some bit of the lore.
I didn't realize the Black Panther was comics before it was a film.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that myself.
Yeah. So in the lore, in the canon of the comics, the Dora Milaje were essentially essentially got their start as a sort of a political compromise. So when the first Black Panther became king of Wakanda, united all the tribes, all the other leaders wanted their daughter to marry the king and become queen, and thus, boost their own prestige and power in the country. So what he did was he's like, okay, I'll take all of them. And then he basically turned them into the Wakandan Secret Service.
I mean, that's a way of doing it. They are not just baby machines. So
yeah, and in the comics, from what I know, the only time the Dora Milaje really show up is actually they're just kind of in the background as the Secret Service. So when it's translated to film, seeing them actively take active roles is an improvement again.
Yeah, I'm getting the impression in the comics they're a bit like the Praetorian Guard. They hang around with the king and only really show up when the fighting's done.
Once again, like I said, I am woefully unread on
the comics.
I'm not up on the comics myself to be able to say whether that's an accurate analogy or not. But
I'm going to say as well, how we were talking about all these different women and their different characters, even ones who have ostensibly the same role are individuals.
Yeah.
Because again, this is a symptom of Hollywood that, every soldier is a patriot and every, blindly follows orders, all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Not here. And we do have that moment, and I think it's the most heartbreaking line, second most heartbreaking line in the whole film, where she says, "Though my heart is with you, I must defend the throne."
Yeah.
No matter who sits on it.
Yeah, the confrontation between Nakia and Okoye after Killmonger takes the throne.
Yeah. Because that is that's the struggle, isn't it? It's loyalty to your country and to what it stands for versus loyalty to the people you love and want to be around.
Yeah.
And I just, it's very... We see that trope in a lot of different things, and it's really nice to see it done, A, with women, B, with black women, but see also done in such a way where Okoye has a line. And as much as she has pledged herself to the throne, hither, O thou shalt come, but no further. I will not let you destroy my country. She doesn't. She isn't blinded by the symbols. She's loyal to what the ideal, not the symbol of it.
So I'm trying to get where we are with the plot of the movie now, because we got to the casino. Yeah, we got to the casino. I'm just trying to move on. Then obviously they do capture Claw, but T'Challa reluctantly agrees to turn him over to the CIA guy.
He lets Ross interrogate him first, but he's still adamant on
taking him home
because Claw is a fugitive from Wakandan justice.
The thing is, as well, he's promised.
Yeah.
And I've got to say, I genuinely think T'Challa cares more about the promise he made to his friend than the fact that this man is a fugitive from justice.
Yeah.
So we do have, yes, the car chase is brilliant, especially the way it ends with the world is watching, and especially in spoilers, in juxtaposition with a certain other scene in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But I won't really bring that up because that's only a few weeks old.
And I've heard things about that particular scene.
Yeah.
The world is watching, and he does the right thing in the moment.
Yeah.
Because you are not judge, jury, and executioner.
Yeah.
And I think that, again, given last summer's events, is a very timely commentary of the world is watching, and he looks up and there's 6 iPhones and 10 Androids, you know. And aside on that young girl is a hero.
Yes, absolutely.
She's absolutely a hero. She brought something to light, and she lit a fire in America.
Yeah.
And I think she's got a GoFundMe, but she's absolutely a hero.
Has she? She got a GoFundMe. I didn't know that.
She's got a thing that after the result of the trial, they set it up, and I think that she's had enough donated. She can go to college. She is set for life. She's I think several 100,000, maybe more. She's good as long as she looks after herself. She can really, and she absolutely deserves it because it took a lot of strength to do that.
Yeah.
And it is the reason I bring that up is sometimes bearing witness is all you can do, but you have to do it. And this is T'Challa's moment of he has to be the bigger man. It's his, the Doctor Who episode where he has the chance to destroy, I think it's the Daleks, it might be the Cybermen.
Yeah, the last Dalek.
The last Dalek. And he says, what are you, Doctor, coward or killer? And he says, no, coward any day. I'm not going to commit genocide. I'm not going to kill someone.
That's a common trope within Doctor Who, because if you
but
Genesis of the Daleks, he's faced with the same dilemma.
Yeah. But it's so important that we see T'Challa have that moment of actually taking the time to stop and think about what he's doing and what it means and what it represents. And it also highlights as well, because we know that's a commentary on the fact that if one black person does anything anywhere in the world, every black person of color or mixed race person is assumed to agree with that to an extent, especially in sort of American culture. You know, one black person does something and all black people are tired with it. And that's something that happens to minorities a lot.
It's it's kind of...
That's the moment we see T'Challa realizing that the world is not like Wakanda and actually beginning to experience the consequences of that realization.
Yeah. So well, anything else to add for the end of the car chase?
Not for me.
What a badass spear throw.
So, oh yeah. So I will say there's a couple of things I want to bring to light in the interrogation scene. First, the comment Okoye makes to Ross when he asks T'Challa if she speaks English.
When she wants to.
Yeah.
I really loved Okoye's character in that movie. For me, I think that was I'm biased, so that was the best character. And I think another thing is just the hairstyles in that movie, because hair is a very important thing with the average black woman. You know, just people want to have all this. But in that movie, you saw that, you know, they had the really short, you know, hair, and it made them look really beautiful and strong. Just having that sort of hair, and she playing that character, she was just amazing, I think.
Yeah, and this is what I meant with the wig, of how hair is such a big thing, and she threw the wig away. I'm glad you said that, because I didn't have the words to elaborate on that. Obviously, I don't have that particular issue.
And the other thing is, Noodle, get your notes ready.
Okay.
The speech Claw has about Wakanda. You know, about how they went looking for El Dorado, but it wasn't in the Americas. It was in Africa.
It's not, because they did. Wakanda is not El Dorado. Wakanda, here's a discussion for you. Wakanda is Atlantis, but Wakanda dodging the failing of Atlantis, which was its own hubris and insistence on not moving with the times and not opening its borders, which is what took Atlantis down, according to some ideas. Now, Atlantis is a thought experiment. There is no real Atlantis. Please, just But this technologically advanced society of powerful, borderline godlike characters who are so far advanced intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, and physically from anything else on Earth.
Based off their sole monopolistic access to a rare material.
Yeah. It's Wakanda. It just is. But Atlantis is under the sea. Wakanda is in Africa. And it feeds into sort of you were talking about before the stream ring African sci-fi. It feeds into all of that.
I think it's called like Afrofuturism.
Yeah. And it's this. What's beautiful about it is it doesn't. The whole point of Atlantis is that these people were more advanced than anything else on Earth. That was the whole point of the thought experiment.
Yeah.
One of the main points. But and that there's various reasons they would have gone underwater, either for self-defense or anything else, and that's what Wakanda is. But Atlantis died off because of its failure to recognize the changing world around it. And the fact that Wakanda opens its borders at the end and begins to communicate is what saves it. And I think it's a wonderful example of how you can do Atlantis right. And I love that it's based in Africa, and I love that it's Wakanda, and I love that for once Black people are the powerful, godlike, advanced society. I cannot emphasize enough how important that is to me, just as a person of color, not even as an African American or as an African. I can't emphasize enough, having grown up saturated in white society, where at best we were the comedy element or the token character, to be the leaders and the people who are going to make the world better.
And also, did you? Sorry to interrupt. After Wakanda, did you notice that the African clothes, the African fabrics, started to become more cool and more accepting in the Hollywood scenes? So when they went on the red carpet, you could see more people now wearing African clothes and African like hats and stuff. So just it kind of helps boost the textile industry in Africa and boost the so things like jewelry and it started to become more cool.
Yeah.
Whereas before, you know when they ask these questions, what are you wearing? You're either wearing one designer or but you could see more people starting now to wear the clothes, and that was after Wakanda movies, which I think was really good for the African culture.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed the difference. I know someone who sourced for me, who lived in Tanzania for a little while, and got me some clothes made out of Katenga. I think that's how it's pronounced, Katenga. And before Black Panda, it was always that's Black Panther.
That's
Black Panther. Totally different movie.
There we go. That's the next sequel to Kung Fu Panda coming up. Yeah.
But yeah, that's the before it was that's a bit bright, isn't it? That's a bit weird, isn't it? And afterwards, it was, where did you get that from? I want that. That looks amazing. Yeah. And not Africa. I just like the clothes, so I bought them. I like bright clothes. Yep. Okay. Yeah. But that change, that cultural, I'm not going to say acceptance because I don't think it's acceptance, but the novelty of it was enough to get the white people around me asking questions and to get them curious. And it's always good to get them curious because that's how you can start educating them.
Mm-hmm. And it is telling that one of the awards won by Black Panther, though in my opinion it was completely and totally snubbed for Best Picture, but at least it got nominated. Mm-hmm. Was Best Costuming.
Yeah. And speaking of the costumes, there's a great line where he's got I'm going to call it a robe because I don't know what the technical term is for it. That's there. It's like, oh yeah, that's got vibranium woven into it too, and it's just the standard sort of purple robe. And it's the idea that they're so bountiful with vibranium that they can put it in their clothes, and you kind of half expect them to be eating it because there's just so much of it.
Yeah.
But they know better and they're putting it to use.
But
and I just
and so the thing you said about black characters, just being the joke or the token for for years, this movie completely and 100 for the most part completely subverts decades of Hollywood.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because Claw, who was billed, who was advertised as the main antagonist, gets killed in his next scene.
Yeah. Which good riddance.
Yeah. And Ross is a weenie who doesn't really do much.
Yeah. And the only other speaking white character is this female curator, who is daft. Yeah.
No, well, if you don't count the Stan Lee cameo, but it's the Stan Lee cameo.
It's the Stan Lee cameo. But Yeah, I think, and do you know what? About damn time.
Yeah.
Just about damn time. Do you know how many movies I've watched over the years and a black character doesn't speak or dies first and then is never mentioned again? Or is the wise woman who gives some weird prophecy and then disappears, looking at the Matrix? Or it's just some random reference to the Lion King or something that's not, they're not even really viewed as a fully fleshed out human.
Yeah.
And it just
or the crap that you and I have been dealing with on a weekly basis for the past year.
What have you been dealing with?
The Asterix and Obelix comics.
Oh, the Asterix, right?
Yeah.
I tried.
We'll just say, although this, I won't get too much into it because this is not about that. We'll just say we've been covering those books for a year. And although there's a lot of great humor, great satire and stuff in those books, let's just say the caricatures and the way black people are depicted, to say it's problematic would be an understatement.
Yeah.
So this is a bit of a you got to also understand this is a real therapeutic palate cleanser for myself and Noodle to be doing this after what we did earlier.
And it's just nice because none of the characters are overtly sexualized, especially the women, which is always an issue for black women in media, which is really annoying. And it's just because we're talking about Atlantis, the idea of them being, they are on a pedestal. They are the characters of Atlantis. They're on a pedestal, and it's just nice to see black characters in that position.
Yeah,
without being questioned. No one's questioning that they belong there or that they've earned their place there or that they aren't advanced or anything else. No one's calling them, liars or cheats or insinuating that somehow white people are the reason they've managed to do so well. It's just, no, they've done this on their own merit and they've used what they had around them.
Yeah.
And most of the actors in that movie have since gone on to do other movies, sort of opened the way for lots of them to have more roles and to have more recognition. And hopefully it'll get better.
There were some very established actors in this film, and it's one of those things that I'll just actually comment on one actor who was in this. And I think this was because I just wanted to for a long time there were not many black actors who won Best Actor at the Oscars. I think
for a long time there weren't any.
Yeah, well, I think Sidney Poitier was the first one.
Right.
Denzel Washington was the second, and the third black actor to win Best Actor at the Oscars is in this movie, and that was Forrest Whitaker.
Oh yeah. Do you remember? Do you remember Lawrence Fishburne? Larry Fishburne. How did you see him?
But you would like the movie Denzel Washington was in where he won it. But it was like it seemed. I don't know how I can put it. It seemed for a while that we'll give a black actor the Best Actor award if they're playing a nasty character. Okay. Denzel Washington was playing a pretty nasty character when he won it. Forrest Whitaker was playing Idi Amin. I don't think you could get much more nasty than Idi Amin.
Because what spoke to white people at the time those awards were given was black people as the villain. And black people weren't controlling the narratives. They were basically the puppets on the director's string, and they had to take the roles they were given. Whereas this one, it was very much,
So here's the thing: would you say Killmonger is the villain, or would you more say he's the threatening antagonist?
I would say he's the anti-hero.
Yeah.
He's the hero who's actually not naive. He is as much a hero as this film is T'Challa.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, it's like, let's just say the antagonist. I don't even want to say the villain in this, because I completely sympathise with his motives.
Yeah,
I do. I mean, and the thing is, after absolutely, centuries of oppression that black people have been subjected to by, I can totally sympathise with this guy's motives. That, and it's like I said, if I was to draw another comparison in comics, and I know this one's been made a lot, I almost feel that there's a similar thing going on between T'Challa and Killmonger as there is between Professor X and Magneto, in a way.
Yes.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
Yeah. Magneto is the one who has seen the impact of all this negativity and of the bad people, and has lived through it and been traumatized by it. And Professor X is the idealistic, kind of vaguely removed, but means well, but hasn't really lived it, so doesn't really have as much skin in the game, but still does.
And so obviously, Killmonger's like, he's been on. You get the idea. He has been on the end of racism. You get that feeling about him. He's learned the history. You saw that in that scene in the British Museum. He knows the history of what the colonial powers did to Africa. He's not, and it's, you could argue that he's angry and that he's an extremist or whatever, but you've got to say, he's like, why not? Why not? Why shouldn't we do to them what they did to us for so many bloody years? You can understand that motivation. You can sympathise with it.
He does as well. He lampshades the idea of the perfect victim, the photogenic victim who just takes it. And there's this thing, and again, talking about recent politics, where I've noticed these black people in America are kind of expected to be morally pure in a way that is impossible for most people. So, they have the worst things done to them and they're expected to forgive and forget and to pray over it. And to accept that they're not going to get accountability, that they're not going to get justice. And they just have to forgive because, and it looking at America from the outside, it just looks like they're tired and they don't have the fight in them to keep fighting anymore. And it's heartbreaking. But he doesn't. He's still fighting. And he's fighting right until the moment he dies. Because he says, no, I will not bow down to these colonists. I will not allow my life in any way, shape or form to be dictated to me by someone who doesn't know what it's like on the ground. It's the difference between talking to a soldier who's been on the ground and a general who was sat in a back office. They'll tell you about the same war, but you'll hear two different stories. That's T'Challa and Eric for me. It's the general and the soldier.
Well, and it's like I said, I know I keep bringing it. I always like, because this book's one of my prized possessions, as people know. But you had to imagine, like I said, the whole thing with, say, the idealist or whatever, with the polarization that went on in the 1960s. The civil rights movement, and you saw on one hand I'd say the idealism of somebody like Martin Luther King.
It's Dr. King and the Black Panthers.
And you see, we've got to be pure, we've got to whatever. Yet they face these, they just face violent repression in their communities every day. And I'm not going to say that, and I would never say Martin Luther King was like ignorant of that, because I got to say this. Martin Luther King was on the end of it himself. He would be, those civil rights marches where the police would tear into them, he was always front and center. So I must make that point. at the same time, I can also see like how someone like the Black Panther Party, who originally started as a countermeasure to racist police officers, and I don't know if you know, Huey Newton was a qualified lawyer, and their whole thing was they started off by patrolling the police, and the Black Panthers would be stood there watching the police doing their jobs with guns in hand, and then the cops would come up to them sort of saying, hey, you've got to back off, blah 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 and whatever. And Huey Newton would talk in the speech to sort of say, actually we are like saying we are within our rights, we are not within, we are like within X amount of feet of you, we have a right to carry us, and we will stand here with our guns watching you do your job whether you like it or not.
Yeah, and it's the strength of bearing witness. That's what I was talking about, the girl who filmed. It's bearing witness, holding, making sure there are witnesses. It's, Dr. King didn't start out as a peaceful protester. It was only when he sat down and spoke with Bayard Rustin, and it was Bayard Rustin who introduced Dr. King to the idea of peaceful protest and not responding.
Yeah.
And, because famously Dr. King kept a gun in his home, and Bayard Rustin said, no, if you're going to go out there and preach non-violence, you need to live non-violence.
And I it's one of those things as well, because I always will remember that I was at a long time ago when I started getting involved with left-wing politics, that I was at a talk, and it was like the whole thing of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X or whatever, and there was a young black youth in the audience who said to the speaker, I like Malcolm because Martin Luther King was a coward because he wouldn't fight back. And the speaker said something brilliant to this young guy. He said, okay, and he explained what happened when the civil rights marchers went to Birmingham, Alabama, which was some of the worst. There was a real nasty police chief called Eugene Bull Connor there, who it was no holds barred when they went there. They would march there. Martin Luther King was front and center, got battered or whatever. They got battered by the police. And the next, they all took a hiding. Martin Luther King was the one who said, tomorrow we march again.
Yeah.
And he was front and center. It happens to him again. And it happens. This was days on end. Martin Luther King, we march again. And he was front and center. Do not ever say that man was a coward.
No, but it's the same. It's the same. It's the Gandhi attitude, isn't it? If they kill 10 of us, 20 more will come in their place. It's that attitude. If they beat us down, we will stand up and keep on marching. But I think there is a passiveness to that, which I can understand where that youth was coming from in his anger and his rage. But I do think, calling Dr. King a coward was a bit... he probably regretted those words as he got older, I think.
Yeah, I think he learned that day. He was a very young, angry, but yeah.
Man. Yeah. Anyways, I'm gonna have to go, but it's good to hear you all speak on these issues and speak on these things. And however bad things are, like with racism and with all, I think it's a better outcome now than it was, say, 20, 30 years ago. It's not where it should be, but it's getting there. And it's in these conversations, and it's in, dialogue, and just, speaking up. And you were talking about that girl who, people like that, we have to carry on having these conversations. And so thanks for having me on, even though...
Can I just get one thing before you go? Because I'm so glad you dropped in here.
Yeah.
As someone from Africa, like you've seen the movie Black Panther, what does that mean to you? Just quickly, what it's really. I think this is really important to get your take on this. I'm trying to think how to better word this, but your take on that movie and something like the idea that there was this brilliant I'm trying to think how to, but I just final thoughts on
final thoughts on the movie.
Yeah,
the movie was good, but this is my opinion. I'm just thinking, it was just a movie. Okay, let's just give the black people a chance. Let's just give them something, Let's just for a minute make them feel like, okay, you've got center stage, and afterwards, it's back to business as usual, right?
Yeah.
So yes, it's opened doors to people, and it's got the conversations going, but then I think they the movie people, they can do better. They can just have. I'm sure there's lots more talented people of color out there. There's giving more people a chance, and not just giving them a little piece of the pudding. Here, have this, and that's it. So
Yeah,
and
I agree.
And not to patronize. Don't be patronizing. Oh, because lately I've been seeing adverts on television. Oh, they just put this one black person. Okay, let's just so it's you can see most of them are trying to create this image. Oh, we're diverse, and but they can do better, if you know what I mean. They can. So hopefully we get to see more of this kind of movies, and getting more black people of color, doing more roles. The big guns, the ones who are up there.
Yeah,
I have more representation.
Yeah, 100%. This movie was a crumb from the table. Or what we need now is someone to say, actually, come and take your seat. Mm-hmm. And for it to mean something, for it to be a step towards that.
Godless Comma, you asked the question, what do you think? Because that question, question, you asked that question as though you've got something to say about it.
I don't have. Yeah, I do love this movie. But it doesn't necessarily would necessarily mean as much to me as that I think it may mean to a person of color. Right. That's just my feeling on it. But like I said, I enjoy it because there's an awful unlike a lot of most of these Marvel movies, as I said at the very beginning of this stream, most of the Marvel movies are kind of popcorn. There is the popcorn element to this, but this movie's got something a lot deeper to say, I think, about and especially about way we approach race, and about the history of colonialism. Mm-hmm. This has got something a lot deeper to say to get about this. So
okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm gonna have to go now.
Yep.
Thanks for having me. And if you want me to come back on, I'm happy to come back on any. I've said to anyone who wants to have me, I'm happy to just come on if you need me. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you for coming.
See you later.
Thank you for your time, Esther, and for your labour as well. We appreciate it.
I'll be in the chat.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
All right. Bye.
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 Yeah.
She's right. She is right. This movie is as excited as I am. This movie was a crumb.
Yeah.
But once you've tasted the crumb at the table, maybe this movie might be what helps, and I say helps, to galvanize a generation to demand their seat.
Yeah.
I really hope it is, because the fact that we're talking about this film 2 years later, we're still excited.
And
says it all. Really appreciate Esther's take on it.
I think Falcon and the Winter Soldier is another step in a similar direction, but more American centric than.
Yeah.
But we'll be talking about that next year.
Yeah. But I do. This film was exciting for me on the surface, but it's the same. And I'm sure if Esther's still in the comments and she wants to correct me if I'm wrong, it's kind of on the day of the trial answer, we all got excited and we were like, wow, this is amazing. This is a turning point. And we don't even know what the sentence is going to be yet. It could just be a token sentence. But we took a moment to just reflect and enjoy the moment.
Yeah.
And for me, this film is another one of those moments. The film is possibly feeding into a large growth and change. But we have to see how that goes. The one thing it has done is there's going to be a generation of kids coming up who are saying, I'm black and I can be a soldier, I can be a king, I can be a prince, I can be a technical whiz, I can be all of these things because I saw it in Black Panther. And for kids to have that is so precious. And that's my main reason for being excited about this film. Because those kids are going to grow up with that sense of knowing that they can do that, and the stories are out there. Because if you can't imagine it, how can you possibly be it?
Yeah.
Whereas, so they've seen it imagined, so now they've got something to go to. Whereas my generation, I look and I don't see people like me in films and TV. I don't. Yeah. So I can't imagine what it's like for, there's no broader goal there. And for the kids, I think it will really matter. But yeah, Esther really does have a point of, it's a crumb and now we need to demand our seat at the table. Yes.
Yes. Wakanda forever.
And that's what it is. It's Wakanda forever. It's that claim of Wakanda. We will make Wakanda last forever. We will build Wakanda. And that, I think, because we were talking about, I want to talk about Killmonger's death scene.
Okay, before we get to Killmonger's death scene,
please put a trigger warning up first.
Also, we've touched on Killmonger, but before we get to Killmonger's death scene, we need to actually talk about Killmonger.
Yeah.
Because, so, in the text of the movie, via a quote from T'Challa, the movie puts the blame for Killmonger on Wakanda's shoulders. But arguably, you could say it was America that made Eric into Killmonger.
No. I know what you're getting at. Wakanda failed Killmonger. Yeah. America made him. And it's important because without the failure of Wakanda, America wouldn't have got a look in.
Yeah.
And that's the point. The point is that, and that's why T'Challa opens the borders at the end, because he finally understands that Wakanda keeping to itself while Black Americans and Black people around the world are suffering is Wakanda's failure.
Yeah.
And and the message that's sending out is we are all one people.
Yeah.
This is who we are. We stand together, and we make a better future.
And how
and we don't fail each other again.
And how Killmonger, narratively and literally, figuratively, straddles the line between African and American.
So does T'Challa in his own way.
Yeah. But, because when he's first, first we have, Ulysses Claw. Well, first he takes the masks. Then we have Ulysses, we have Claw's last words to him, which were, "I thought you were just another crazy American." And then, Ross, says, "Oh, he's one of ours."
And this is the moment you realize, but is he?
Yeah.
And it's very telling that Ross is happy to just claim, without ever speaking to Killmonger, just claim, "Oh yeah, he's one of ours."
Yeah.
And yet, all Eric wants is to be Wakandan.
Yeah.
And this is why, again, this is something I understand as someone who's mixed race. I was born and raised in Britain. For a long time growing up, particularly because I was seeing the anti-Polish sentiment, all I wanted was a Polish passport. For years and years, I was like, how do I do it? How do I do it? How do I do it? And it was as I got older, and only because honestly, Ring, hand on heart, if we weren't married, I would be on a Polish passport right now. Marrying you and making the decisions that are going to lead to our future is the only reason I didn't apply for a Polish passport, because that would have complicated matters for visas and things.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I don't hold my Polish identity dear. And I can still, at any time I'm ready, apply for my Polish passport, and I probably will in future.
Yeah.
But it's there, and it's that thing of, it's a very white thing to claim someone as as one of your own just because they were born on your land.
Yeah.
It's kind of gross.
And the thing is, it's good that we're starting to talk, get into Killmonger now, because the second half of Black Panther is very much Killmonger's movie.
Yes.
And he's very much set up as a counter to, T'Challa. Like for instance, in both scenes where T'Challa visits the afterlife, he's on the plains of Wakanda. But when Killmonger takes the heart shaper and visits, he's in the apartment in Oakland, and the only reason that he's in the spirit plane is because of the view outside the window.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's this sense of dying takes you home.
Yeah.
T'Challa has never questioned that Wakanda is his home. He's never questioned his position in that line of kings. That's why they come to him. Plus the whole Lion King.
Yeah.
Lion King. Insert Lion King reference here. Eric has never known anything but being the black boy from Oakland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even as he's trying to do better and be better and change things. And it speaks to that disconnect as someone of descent from a country you're not part of. Like, I have I wouldn't know Poland if you showed me a picture. I wouldn't know a random street in Poland if you showed me a picture of it. I wouldn't, I've never been.
Yeah.
But there will always be a part of my heart in Poland, just as there will always be a part of my heart in Jamaica, just as there will always be a part of my heart in India. Because that's what I was raised to be told. Those places are home. For a long time as a teenager, I used to say, no, Britain's not my home. I might travel on a British passport, but this is not my home. It's where I was born, but it's not where I belong. And I used to say that regular. And to an extent, I still believe it, particularly with recent political developments.
Mm.
And it's that sense of when you're torn away from, for whatever reason, from where you come from, it throws every other aspect of your identity into question.
Yeah.
And if you've ever questioned any aspect of your identity, you know how harrowing that is to go through, especially if you have to go through it alone. And yes, there is an entire African American diaspora who are going through it, but they are all going through it on an individual level. They are all going through it in those individual little rundown apartments where no one really checks on them or asks when last they had a decent meal or checks if they've got health insurance. That's, and there's a loneliness to it that is really difficult to explain to anyone who hasn't been through it.
So,
but you will never be. You can't even speak to your own parents about it because they have memories of it that you don't. It's a particularly isolating feeling, and that comes across in Eric because Eric is a loner, and Eric fights hard. Like I think canonically isn't he like Spec Ops or something, or he's been Spec Ops or something?
Yeah,
typical
he's like
American hero. They've made him military.
He's a former Navy SEAL who's obviously taken part in some quote unquote black operations.
So he's very clearly he's a very American character. He is. In any other movie, he would be the out and out hero.
And I'm trying to get where we are in the plot, obviously, because going back to obviously when he finally comes to Wakanda, that you know what I was saying earlier about how Claw thought he was the one in maybe in charge in that relationship.
Yeah.
And you see what happens to Claw.
Yeah.
Exactly. He served his purpose. Eric is the one in charge there.
Yeah.
He has served his purpose. He's gone.
Yeah.
And I've got to admit, it's definitely I've got to say, as far as and again, I don't even really view Eric as a villain. He's the
anti-hero.
He's an anti-hero. The antagonist.
He's not the antagonist. He's the anti-hero.
Claw's a villain. But basically, sort of seeing what happens to him take Claw down, I was like, yes.
It had to be Eric who took Claw down. It had to be.
Yeah.
And so we've covered him taking Claw down. We've covered the afterlife scenes.
Yeah.
There's something I want to point out. T'Challa and Eric's fighting styles, because we're getting on to the fight and the final death scene. Eric fights like his life depends on it. He fights hard, he fights fast, and he fights dirty. He's very mean streets, MMA.
Well,
whereas T'Challa,
like especially in the challenge.
Yeah. Whereas T'Challa is very. This is why it was important in the first challenge that I didn't kill.
Yeah.
He has. How do I word this? And I need to think. Give me a second. He has been raised in a situation of privilege relative to Eric, such that he has the luxury of being able to be honourable when he fights.
I'm going to make a really dumb analogy with this, but T'Challa is Miyagi-Do and Eric is Cobra Kai.
Kind of?
Yeah.
Kind of?
In a way, strike. Eric is strike fast, strike hard, no mercy.
Yeah.
T'Challa is, formally schooled in martial arts, while
Eric has fought to survive.
Yeah, Eric grew up on the streets, then went through all the kinds of shit they put you through to be a Navy SEAL.
Yeah, he's lived it. Again, it's the difference. Do you know what it's the difference between? It's the difference between a soldier and someone wearing a MAGA hat.
Yeah.
Yeah, and someone with bone spurs. That's the difference. You can claim you're a patriot all you like, but you haven't lived it. And I'm using that analogy for the Americans because I know there's a lot of Americans there, but it's the difference between the person who sits and watches the boxing and the person in the ring.
Though, arguably, you could say that Killmonger puts a little too much of his personal feelings into it. Because, yes, his greater goal, for worldwide liberation, but he also points out that, where he takes off his outfit for the ceremonial combat, he lists off all the places he's gone and people he's killed, is all to kill you. And then when Zuri tries to interfere, he turns and he says, "I'll take you both, Uncle James."
Right.
Wow. Yeah.
I see what you're getting at.
Yeah.
This man has lived a life that none of us currently in this stream can understand.
Yeah.
He has spent his life on the receiving end. He has spent his life fighting for what he believes, fighting for his right to exist. So yes, when it comes down to it and he's finally faced with the person who is the last person in the way of his dreams and his hopes and and what he believes is his only opportunity to change things and make things better, you're damn right it's personal. That's a personal fight. And that's the point. For Eric, it is personal because he's lived it and breathed it. To an extent, it's not personal for T'Challa until he finds out who Eric is. It wouldn't be personal. It's not even personal when he finds out that it's not personal with Claw. It's in a sense, it's strictly business. This is my duty. I have to take this guy out to protect my country. There's nothing personal there. And it's only actually, I think, after the fighting's done that it becomes personal for T'Challa.
Yeah.
Like, properly personal.
And obviously, with that obviously that final battle and then that final scene between the two of them.
Hold on.
But
because there is one other scene that I need to mention when we're talking about Killmonger. The scene where he walks into the scene where he walks into the throne room after taking the heart shaper.
Ask me what my name is.
No, I'm talking about the one with the Dutch tilt, where it starts upside down and then flips.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where he has the throne now. And it's, the scene starts upside down, and then as he walks towards the throne, it flips until it's right side up just as he's sitting down on it.
Yeah. The camera work there is important. It's sending a message. He's come from underneath to take the throne. But it's...
Also, you could say, since the second half is very much Killmonger's movie,
That's the physical Volta of the narrative.
And from his perspective, he is righting the world.
Yeah.
His ascension to the throne is righting the world.
Well, this is the thing. Every villain is the hero of their own story.
Yeah.
What makes a villain an anti-hero is when other people can sympathize with their motives and their means, which is why I say he's an anti-hero. He's not a villain.
Yeah.
And he is... I get it. I really get it. I if someone's, it's the age-old question is, what would you do if you controlled the world for a day?
Yeah.
How would you change things? What would you do? And everyone answers, I'd end world poverty, I'd end hunger, I'd that's what he wants. That's what he wants to do. His motives and his heart's in the right place.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the patience. And rightly so. Because why should he have to wait for what other people have? The time for patience, that's the whole thing with Eric, his thing is the time for patience is past.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have to wait for my right to exist and live and thrive. And he's saying, no, the time, and no more waiting. The time is now. That's what he's doing. And that's what T'Challa learns from him. T'Challa learns that, no, we cannot abandon these people to wait any longer.
Yeah.
And the death scene is very telling that at the moment of his death, he invokes his ancestors. But he doesn't invoke his Wakandan ancestors. He invokes the ancestors he identifies with as an African American. It's so important because in that moment, he's not Wakandan. He's just another black guy fighting for something.
Yeah.
He's another kid from Oakland who used to believe in fairy tales.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and he would rather die a free man than live imprisoned.
That
is such a... Again, it's something it's very difficult to explain to people who have not been in a situation where you have to genuinely consider what you would do in that situation.
Yeah.
But, there are... Of the two of them, Eric's the one I want on next to me in a fight. Because Eric ain't backing down. Eric is fighting and dying next to me to defend us. He's the ally I want. T'Challa, honestly, he's an all right bloke, but do I trust him to lay down his life for what we're fighting for at the end of the day? Or do I believe he's going to wait until a break in the firing and then run off and make a peace treaty? The time for peace treaties is over.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point that Eric is saying. He would rather die a free man fighting for what he believes in than live and have to potentially watch it come to nothing.
Yeah.
It's the French resistance. It's the, there are so many stories throughout history. It's I'm Spartacus. It's the French Revolution. It's the White Rose Society. It's
the barricade.
It's
Russian
the barricade.
Revolution, whatever.
It's the Russian. It's the people who did those things, who are fighting for change, are the ones who are willing to lay down their lives and who would rather die than carry on living the way they were. T'Challa was not one of those people, and it was never in this film one of those people. We need a combination of both in any given battle. You need people who are willing to fight and die for what they believe in. You also need people who are capable diplomats.
Yeah.
Because that's how you come to an eventual peace. But this is why I cried at Eric's death scene. Because that line of,
bury me at sea where my ancestors jumped from the ships because they knew that death was better than bondage.
Goddamn, yeah.
Yeah. That's one of those that speaks to so much to any oppressed minority anywhere. It's that moment of saying they lived and they survived so I could get this far, but I'm done because I can't keep living like this. It's that moment of saying, I want to go home. And this is Eric's entire thing. He just wants to go home. And for a long time, he believed Wakanda was home, but Wakanda wasn't home. Wakanda was with his people. He conflated Wakanda with being with his own. He thought Wakanda was his people, but he wasn't. He was an outsider. Bury me at sea with my people where I belong. That's what he's saying there. And it's... Sorry, I'm tearing up because it's really hard to explain what that speech means.
It's so goddamn powerful. It really is.
It is.
And Eric, I mean, to me, Eric's a tragic character in this, really.
He's incredibly tragic. He's also... He's incredibly real. And he's incredibly human in a way that T'Challa and the others just aren't. Again, because he's been there, he's seen it. They weren't raised in this culture of being second best, being oppressed, being poor, being the kid from Oakland. He was. And he's saying, no, the way I was raised and the culture I grew up in is the truth. And in that moment when he says, bury me at sea, he's declaring his truth as being, no, what I was raised in and what I know is more true than the fairy tale I was told. And it's the fact that he finally realizes that his truth was never in Wakanda. But it takes its moment of death for him to come to it. And he is, first and foremost, he's not African. He's African American.
Yeah.
But it takes him having to go through that and see that even as their king, he was not accepted by the Wakandans because he's not one of them. He might have the mark in his mouth.
He might have won the throne legitimately, but it was not one of them. They didn't. It's not that they wanted him. They didn't want him there. I mean, okay, there were obviously one, because this is brought up. There were one or two elements that did, that were on his side, obviously. But generally speaking, they might have accepted the legitimacy of his rule, but they didn't want him.
Exactly, and his truth is that he has more in common with the people whose ancestors were brought to America on ships than he does with his own father's brother. And that's his truth. And there's a whole conversation about honorable deaths and the right to choose how you die and the right to state your own piece and make a last testament and to bear witness to who and what you are in your moment of death. And all of that feeds into this moment. And you realize that he has lived his entire life believing in a lie, believing in a fairy tale, that he would go to Wakanda and it would all be perfect and it would be better. That's what he believed, and then it didn't happen. So in the moment, he has to, and this is showing his understanding that home is not where your family's from. It's not the stories you were told. Home is the people you love and the people you identify with. And it's such a strong statement for anyone who lives between cultures. Home is, it's literally, it's a cliche, but home is where the heart is. And his heart is with African Americans.
Yeah.
It's not with Wakandans.
So,
and it matters so much.
It really does, and it is so powerful. But and I think obviously, I mean, this obviously leads towards the end of the film here, and obviously, kind of the end of this is that Wakanda now is going to reach out to the world. Now.
Yeah. The apartment complex in Oakland is becoming the first Wakandan outreach center.
Yeah.
Yeah. That matters. The symbolism of that matters. Because that's Wakanda saying, no, these are our people.
And then, of course, we also have the spaceship or the airship out in the open for everybody to look at while Shuri, teaches the kids about Wakandan technology.
Yeah. Teaches black kids about Wakandan technology.
Yeah.
Teaches them that they can do better with this than just sell it for scrap.
Yeah.
Because that's a great line, and it's funny, but it's also very telling.
Yeah.
But also, at the moment of dying, Eric planted his flag, if you like, with African Americans.
Yeah.
T'Challa going back to that building and making it the Wakandan Outreach Center is him planting his flag there and saying, no, this is you are our people. He's basically taking what Eric in that moment was saying, you never accepted me. That's, and there's going to be a lot of guilt for T'Challa there. But the one thing T'Challa can do is make sure no other kid goes through what Eric went through.
Yeah.
And that's why he has to start where Eric started. He has to go back to Eric's beginning in order to build fresh. That's why that building's so important. And that space. And those boys on that playground who 20 years earlier were Eric and his friends.
Yeah.
And again, it shows that nothing has changed in that time. But they're going to make that change now, and they're going to do it in Eric's name. Because Eric was the catalyst they needed.
Yeah.
Which is why I say he's the anti-hero.
Yeah.
He's the heroic character who dies in the last act and who all growth from there on and all positive outcomes of the finale are attributed to. He's the Tony Stark. He's the... I can't think of another example. I can't think of another example that people won't argue with me anyway.
Yeah.
Because I do have another example, but
Yeah. I can be very controversial for this, supposedly atheistic space.
Yeah, he's the
yes. That dude.
Yeah, that dude. Yeah, he's that dude.
Yeah, well,
but his renewal and his rebirth is symbolic, not literal, because he's not a Mary Sue.
Yeah, not literal because he's not T'Challa.
Yeah. But that's the point. They've both been through rebirths. And it's that shared experience that brings them together and finally forges something with the potential for growth.
Yeah.
And I just,
I mean, I just it's amazing because I was just looking at some of the historical figures. I mean, I've gone through the things Michael B. Jordan referenced for historical figures that they drew inspiration from. I was just reading this at Chadwick Boseman. Looked into Nelson Mandela, Patrice Lumumba, and Shaka Zulu whilst preparing for Black Panther. It sounds like there's a lot of historical kind of research put into kind of what these characters were supposed to be.
I think as well, what it was is the actors realised what they had and realised that they had to bring their truth to the screen.
Yeah.
And their truth is Black history in America. And so they had to understand it as best they could. And understand the figures around it. Because that's when you join a movement, you want to read the founding texts, or you want to read the about the leaders, and you want to understand what you're getting involved in.
Yeah.
And I think the actors in this film knew that this was they were part of a movement.
Yeah.
They probably already knew. It's one of those things where they took the opportunity to learn their own history so they could pass on that respect for their history. Because what they brought, they didn't bring essays and lectures on Malcolm X and Dr. King and Bayard Rustin and the Black Panthers to this film. What they brought was the respect they learned from learning about those historical figures.
Yeah.
And that respect bleeds out of this film.
Yeah.
And that is, especially in the character of Eric, he knows his history. And it is his history.
Yeah.
And it's just...
Now...
Yeah.
A couple of footnotes before we finish with the end credits scene that matters for... that matters for the thesis of the movie, not the end credit scene that matters for the, continuity of the MCU. Okay, so footnote 1. Shuri's great line about another broken white boy to fix.
I love it.
Yeah.
Did you know what she's talking about, Chloe? She's talking about Martin Freeman's character, and now she's talking about him.
Well, no, so she was talking about, she was talking about Ross in that, Martin Freeman. But that was a reference, on like, so, that, like, on screen, that was a reference to Bucky.
Yeah.
But it's also, in a way, like, once again, the subversion of the white savior, white supremacy trope, where it's, it's the Wakandans who are fixing the white people.
Yeah. Great footnote. A footnote of my own. All that discussion I had about how T'Challa and Eric, two sides of the same coin, fighting the same battle with different reasons and different experiences. You can also take all of that and put it under the umbrella of class warfare and class differences. You can also apply that reading to it, which I think is very telling. T'Challa's lived a life of luxury. Eric, not so much, and it shows. Especially in the fight scenes. Eric, like we said, fights dirty because he doesn't have the luxury of otherwise. What else have I got to add? I think we've covered most. You've just done the white savior thing. And yet, the one thing we see with the white savior, with Ross, even when he's helped, he's still kind of there. looking to see what he can get.
Yeah.
He's a bit of a magpie.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's CIA and it's his job, but he's indicative of, I think, the colonizer mentality. And I think he's a dangerous character because he's the friendly colonizer.
Yeah.
He shows up with gifts of food and gold and this, that, and the other. And, you know, and tries to be friendly. He doesn't show up and point a gun at your head and demand your land.
Hey, I did you a favor and didn't tell the UN that the King of Wakanda runs around in a bulletproof cat suit.
Exactly,
yeah.
And it's that mentality.
Which is
indicative, I think, is meant to be. Ross is quite clearly meant to be indicative of the American mentality in this film.
Well, and then, you know, who are you going to believe, us or the arms dealer tied to a chair?
And he still looks at the arms dealer and half believes him because at least that dude's white.
Yeah.
Also, just to point out, did he ever thank them for saving him and for giving him his mobility back?
Can't remember.
No. But so since we are talking about Ross, that kind of segues into my other footnote that I wanted to talk about.
Boom.
Where we get to see more of M'Baku.
M'Baku is great because he's the bridge between T'Challa, Eric. He's basically the bridge between T'Challa and Eric.
Yeah.
He's the guy. He's not His Royal Highness.
Yeah.
He's just a regular dude in Wakanda, and he gets it. He gets Eric.
Yeah.
He understands why Eric is pissed off.
And, you know, and the scene, you know, where Ross is trying to weasel in on the conversation and he just shuts him down.
Yes. Shut up or I will feed you to my children. Don't worry, we're vegetarian.
Yeah.
I love it. I just want to point out as well, again, how funny it is to see African characters lampooning and taking racist tropes and showing white people their own asses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because for a moment, Ross genuinely believes it.
Yeah.
And that Ross is not overtly racist. He's not. But for a moment, he genuinely believes it. And he believes it because they're African and they're black.
And
he's
also
been taught his entire life.
It's a bit like I know we mentioned this earlier, and I don't think
it's
the whole
the same. Does she speak English more?
I don't want to get the whole chat going down that rabbit hole again. We mentioned Rising Damp earlier. There's a great. I can't remember the exact wordage, so I'm paraphrasing, but it was talking about a sort of illness or whatever, and Rigsby says something to Philip along the lines, I thought you Africans would have had some sort of witch doctor cure for that. And then he says, well, actually we do. And he goes to this whole thing of where we grind up the bones of this and whatever, and then this makes our infections go away. He says, that really works, does it? He says, and then Philip goes, well, it was either that or the penicillin. We're not quite sure.
But, and M'Baku, not only just being like some, a bit of, uppity comic relief. He carries he steals every scene he's in.
Yes.
Yes.
And he has a strong sense of honor.
Yeah.
A life for a life. You have my word. And then, he refuses Jabari aid to T'Challa. But then in the climax of the scene, he enters with witness the might of the Jabari.
Yeah, because he's realized this is the difference. T'Challa asks, but T'Challa's not asking him in the right way. T'Challa is still protecting his own interests, his own class interests. He's protecting central Wakanda. He's not protecting the outreach. Yeah. But then when M'Baku sees these invaders are coming, and look what they're doing to our country, and holy shit, we have to fight back.
Yeah. And
we are here, and this is who we are.
Well, he also...
It's the common enemy within, isn't it?
Well, he's also seizing the opportunity to boost the prestige of his own people, to say, hey, because generations of kings have passed and you're the first one to come to Jabari land.
Yeah, it's like when the royal family come to Yorkshire.
Yeah.
Okay, they don't. And if they do, they skin up the noses, they're here for half an hour and off the trot.
But
it's yeah.
Yeah. Like
I get it. I really get
he shows up in the nick of time to increase the prestige of his people and reintegrate his way.
Yes, but I like to think as well that he was already on his way.
Yeah.
It wasn't that it was in the nick of time. They were quite clearly already on the way. You can't muster up an army that fast.
Yeah.
So they knew they had a fight on their hands, and they arrived in the nick of time because cinematic timing is everything. But he took the opportunity to increase the prestige of his people, but his main goal, first and foremost, was defense of his country.
Yeah.
So as much as he was on the outskirts of Wakanda, he never felt like he didn't belong to Wakanda.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. Most people, again, using Britain as an example, because this is where I live, most people in Yorkshire will say, we will bitch and moan about Londoners until the cows come home. We will. Yeah. But if someone declared war and invaded London, you bet your life we'd be down there helping out, passing out food parcels and fighting back, because this is that's what the country is.
We'd never
bring the country together.
Can I just say something though? We'd never hear the end of it.
Because I wouldn't. I probably wouldn't. I'd be there because I care about people, not because I care about the country.
Yeah.
And I think that's the moment where you see that M'Baku sort of realised, oh, we're all Wakandans.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I decided to make a song.
I just want to say something about that. If the south of England got invaded and it was Yorkshire that bailed us out, we'd never hear the fucking end of it.
So
bloody southern pansies,
To be fair, you never hear the end of it now, and we've done it before.
Yeah, I know.
Though I will say, he did it to help. So I still think he the more better analogy would probably be Scottish and English. He did it more to help the Jabari than Wakanda as a whole. Because
I don't agree.
So, from M'Baku's point of view,
it's a war call. That's all it is. It's just a war call. Yes, he's taking the prestige for his people, but first and foremost, he's fighting for Wakanda. And he's fighting for the people who are trapped and trying to defend Wakanda. And which tribe they are doesn't matter. But what he's saying is, we are here. We count us. We are here. We will stand up and be counted with you. That's what he's saying there. Witness the might of when we come together and we are part of you.
Though I think it is important that he makes the show, like, he refuses to T'Challa first and then takes his own initiative to help.
Yes, it is. Because if he gives T'Challa what he wants initially, he remains subservient to T'Challa. By coming of his own accord, he is an equal to T'Challa.
Yes.
And that matters because if he is an equal to T'Challa, that means his people are equals to Wakandans.
Yeah.
And that means his people matter, and that's all he's ever wanted for them.
Which is
obvious in the comment of, you haven't been here in, generations.
Yeah, which is the point I was trying to make.
Yeah. So we got there in the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, he wants recognition for what his country is. It's more, I don't think it's Scotland. I think it's more... Okay, so Liverpool has a very strong history of being a port city, of contributing massive amounts of money to the UK economy. I'm going to say the English economy, and I mean England. Liverpool doesn't get the recognition it deserves. So if something happened and Liverpool and the people of Liverpool stood up and said no, and jumped in at the last minute and said, no, we will not allow this to happen because we are that last piece of the puzzle that will save it. Damn right, they should do it while we're wearing Liverpool football shirts and talking about their city, as an example.
Hold on. Or Everton, because I've seen dogs in the chat, or Everton.
Or Everton. But, this is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
People are proud of where they're from on a local level. And the way you unify a country is to tap into that on a national level. Yeah. And that's what M'Baku's appearance does there.
So, So the UN speech.
You were doing so well, T'Challa.
Yeah.
He's still an arrogant shit. Yeah. He's still obviously a privileged, arrogant little git.
Yeah.
But rightly so.
Thanks, dog. No worries.
Rightly so. But he makes a good point.
Yeah.
The problem is, it's the UN.
Yeah.
For me, the end of this film is the end of the battle and the death of Eric. It's not this scene.
Yeah.
This scene, for me, recenters America in the narrative, and I don't like it.
Well, see...
No. Let me rephrase. It recenters white America in the narrative, and I don't like it.
Well, so the reason why I wanted to bring up the speech isn't the speech itself. It's where the diplomat, asks the ignorant question, and then it closes on the knowing smiles of the Wakandans.
Yeah. You ain't seen nothing yet.
Yeah.
Yes, it's funny. It's a good joke.
Yeah.
I would have preferred to see, as an end scene, totally hypothetical.
Yeah.
Wakandans going out into Africa, not into America or the US, into Africa.
Yeah.
Going to South Africa, Egypt, Syria, Libya. You could have even put flashcards up of different places of them going out and meeting their people and helping to build cities, build communities, and giving them the tools back and spreading that out that way. Or even you could have had it of T'Challa, M'Baku, Shuri, what's her name? The girlfriend?
Nakia.
Yeah. And Okoye stood at the border and comes a row of vans or a row of lorries or a train that they've built, a railway track that they've built, and people are coming in on the train. Africans are coming in on the train to visit Wakanda and see and to learn so they can take it home with them.
Yeah.
And to build
that would have been
that to me would have
ending.
been a better ending.
That would have been the
because
perfect
that is
ending
Africans
for that movie.
helping Africans and doing it on a ground level from the bottom up and getting the hands dirty. Even you could have even had T'Challa or Nakoye or any of them in a tiny little out in the sticks African village somewhere, helping, walking in, and they're saying, "Are you here to help us build a well?" And you could even have the knowing smirk of, "Oh, a well's only where we're going to start."
Yeah.
Any one of those, I think, would have been better than taking it to the UN. Because the UN then centers Western powers back in the narrative, and
see. This is the thing. They could have done the UN thing, but maybe then cut to a kind of a scene of we've already started an outreach program.
Yeah.
And like I said, it could be it could be them Wakandans going and helping people in, say, Uganda or Kenya or Democratic Republic of the Congo, wherever, Nigeria, wherever it may be.
They didn't even have to put a place there. They could have just shown generic African village number 3 with a thatched roof and a dilapidated schoolhouse. And come on, we've got work to do. Dig in.
Yeah.
Pick up a shovel. Come on, we've got work to do. We're building. And that would have been better for me because then it completes the circle.
Yeah.
Or for me, the better ending is being in Auckland and that moment where Shuri walks up to the boys when they're looking at it and starts teaching them. That's the vibe I wanted for an ending.
Though arguably the UN scene isn't really an ending; it's more of a post-credit because it's a mid-credit scene.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah.
I
mean, actually, I would. Yeah, me being me, I might have gone a little bit further and having like the one of the Wakandans literally pick fucking Bono up and throw him out of Africa. But, that's just me. No, that's just me personally.
Yeah. So, final thoughts.
Amazing, wonderful, fantastic film. Go on, Jeff. Sorry, I interrupted.
Did you like this film, Noodle?
A little bit. Can you tell?
Okay. Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad.
It's not bad. It's all right.
I mean, look, it obviously can't have been that good of a film. We've only spent like over 3 hours talking about it, so it can't be that good of a film. No, I said earlier that this stands out amongst the Marvel Cinematic Universe films in a lot of ways for having a really deep message that it conveys. That yet still manages to, yet at the same time, still manages to have that good popcorn fun that you expect from the MCU.
Yeah,
that's quite an incredible feat to pull off.
It is.
Yeah,
I will say, I think it was a TV show, but I think the last time I saw a piece of media that did that spoke to race in America and was still actually a good watch, and you could sit down and watch it and enjoy the comic relief moments and the relationships, was probably Roots. And obviously Roots was a long TV show and was harrowing in the first season, so if you watch it, trigger warning. But it had that thing of you could sit down and watch it as a family after dinner, but also it spoke a truth. And what I love about this film is this story is being told from a position of power, and there's this concept in oppressed politics of speaking truth to power. This film spoke truth from power. From a position of power. And it put the characters who were speaking truth in a position of power. And that matters so much because with power comes ability and the ability to change. So it was speaking truth to power, but it was doing it in such a way that it uplifted those it was speaking on behalf of rather than presenting them as victims.
And I think another thing is that this film as well, I think, got its message out without beating the audience over the head with it. Which is sometimes a bit of an issue with, I think, with writing these days. That sometimes sometimes it's
a bit too obvious.
Sometimes it's too obvious, and they're just beating you over the head with a message they're trying to give you, and it kind of turns people off. This can get you to think on a deeper level while still being a lot of fun. That's the way. That's the way to interject deeper meanings or political points into movies or television or whatever. To me,
for entertainment purposes, yes. I think I would be very disappointed in any person who watched this film and then stopped questioning and stopped being curious about what it meant. I think it was deliberately made palatable for a white audience, which is why it had to have the UN ending. Because it couldn't exclude the white audience entirely from the narrative.
Well, also, that's why Ross is there.
Yeah. He's the white audience way in. The concern I have with that is that race politics aren't palatable. What black people go through is not palatable. It's horrible. It's horrendous. It's horrific. And this was the tip of the iceberg. And it's a great open door, but it's an invitation to learn. It's not the final lesson.
It's the first step of a long journey.
Yeah.
Could you just highlight Never Again's comment there, Ring? I think we've convinced. I think we've sold someone on watching it.
Yeah, definitely watch it. Bring tissues.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful movie. Film. It's just visually stunning as well.
Yeah. So my final thought is it was fucking snubbed at the Oscars.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
And if I remember right, it's a damn shame that people had to put so much pressure on the Academy just to get it nominated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, the Academy is an old white racist institution, so what do you expect?
Yeah.
But
it's trying to pretend to be woke at the moment, but it's just not. It fucked up this year. It did Chadwick Boseman and his family dirty this year. But that's a different stream again. Yeah. Let's not, or I'll go for another hour.
And also, it's one of the first movies in the MCU where Marvel really tries to do something more and something different with the superhero genre and the MCU in particular. Though we do see a little bit of that in the movie we're talking about next week, which is Doctor Strange, and that's my transition into Shilling.
Cool.
Okay.
Let's go, my Shilling.
Well, I don't really have much plans coming up other than next week. Myself and Noodle will get to we'll be doing Asterix and the Chieftain's Daughter on Noodle's channel is the plan, and then we're kind of, at least for the time being, done with it, because unless we want to have like a wrap-up stream at some point, I don't know, but
I might do a wrap-up stream the week after on your channel.
Okay, and then we might do that, but as anyone who watched us the stream earlier could tell, we are kind of getting to a point of it's been a good run, but we're kind of getting tired of this now, because of all the issues with those books. So Hopefully, no, we have not read this one yet. Hopefully, we can. Fingers crossed, we can go out on a high with the next one, but we don't know. We haven't read it yet. But we can hope that it's we can at least wrap it up on a high. So,
yeah. I am putting a pin in Death Stranding for another week because I'm easing back into things slowly. So my next thing is Asterix and Obelix next week on Stummer's channel.
your channel.
My channel. Sorry, yes, my channel.
Yeah.
I'm coming down from my fangirl high. Leave me alone. Again, Tony Keane is doing sci-fi in the classics. Tony Keane 46 on Twitter. Go find him. Go sign up if you like sci-fi and you're interested in learning about classical history and how it's presented in the media. He's very good. And that's my sort of big thing. I want to shill for him because I will always shill for Tony because he's amazing. Do keep an eye out for Classics Twitter movie. That is still a thing that happens every week if you watch it. And yeah. Oh, also, I want to shill, totally unrelated to this stream or any other streams. I'm part of the Hannibal fandom, and every Thursday we do a rewatch on Thursdays and Fridays. Come join us because Hannibal deserves more and we want season 4, please. We do a rewatch on Twitter, so join us for that. The hashtag is Hannibal deserves more.
I preferred Hannibal when he had BA Face and Murdoch with him.
Fair.
Sorry, I had to do it.
But yeah, that's all I have to shield, just general social media stuff.
I'll just close with saying I love it when a stream comes together.
Yeah.
Ring, anything to shill?
Yeah. So next Saturday, Secular D&D should be back. We only put it on hiatus this week because of the 24-hour fundraiser stream for Manda.
Mm-hmm.
So Secular D&D will be back on this weekend. However, I am putting it on this coming weekend. I am putting it on hiatus again on the 22nd because I'm pretty sure I'm just going to need to sleep that day because that's when I get jabbed too.
Yeah. And you're getting Pfizer as well.
Yeah. No, I'm getting Moderna.
Oh, so you might get
okay. I'm getting AstraZeneca number 2 on Tuesday. So,
but yeah. So
I would say the first one screwed me up. So
Pfizer, the second one screwed me up.
And of course, next week on Media Musings is Doctor Strange, which is actually my personal favorite.
Of course, it is.
And we'll be wrapping up the month, hopefully, with Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, which is my.
I'll have an excuse to shill Hannibal next week too. There'll be a link.
I mean, to be honest, I only sort of plugged that one just as an excuse to watch Guardians again, but not that I need one, but
yeah. So
I'll have to dig out my Groot. I've got a Groot somewhere. I have a Groot.
With that, let's move to taglines.
I don't really do taglines, as you know, but see you guys later. Salute.
Take care, be good, and if you can't be good, remember, use your noodle.
And remember, the purpose of a storyteller is not to tell you how to think, but to give you questions to think on. Too often, we forget that.